happy that the connection's a lot better looking. So
Sean Reed's Full Sack Part 3. How is it looking?
Hopefully it's a lot better because the connection's looking a lot better.
It should hopefully have fixed every problem.
It's taken 3 attempts to read Full Sack, but that's how it is.
Always does.
Yep.
Always does.
Third time's the charm for the sack.
Things should be fixed. I'm just gonna wait for people to show up to tell me that they're fixed and that everything is good, because the connection seems really solid now. I think I have fixed everything.
Perfect.
Please let me know if things are fixed.
Yeah, it's like 4,000.
It doesn't
last time.
look like it's... Yeah, it was at 100 kilobytes the last time. Now it's at 4,000. So I believe I have really solved everything. But I would like to know. I'm not seeing any buffering, which is a good sign.
There's one person in.
There is one person in, but I think that's me.
Alright, yeah. It's way better. Awesome, Emma.
Thank you, Emma. Yes, good.
Matthew's fixed the problem.
Problem has been solved.
Let's continue
Jesus
reading.
Christ.
I know.
I don't want to continue reading.
You're not reading, you're just listening.
It's hell. It's hell. If anybody wants to change to my book, just say in the chat and we'll go through my book, because I think that would be more fun. Honestly, you just want
the pain to be over.
Honestly, like,
you want it to be over.
It could be a silly time, and we could all have some goofs and gaffs.
Goofs and gaffs.
Or this can continue, and this is the nightmare.
Yeah, we're both living and breathing it.
Yeah, we are 14%. Oh fuck. Oh
yeah,
god,
you
guys were so far behind as well. We missed a lot of this book. We might have to go back.
We could also just maybe sum up what's happened.
Yeah.
We could sum up what's happened.
Well, I'm gonna change seats.
Yeah, let's do it.
And leave some comments. Let us know how you feel, because I feel like dying.
Yeah, I also feel like dying. It's not a fun book. It's awful. But in terms for context for everybody back at home, so Mr. Pointy is obviously the cat that's dying, and what's his face, Raccoon, is the supernatural wizard guy that wants to be Jennifer's boyfriend to her family's Thanksgiving. And yeah, it was going to be an exchange of sucking cock, but instead he was like, I want to meet your family and be your boyfriend, and then you can suck my penis. And it seems to be Raccoon's done multiple favors and done so many supernatural magic requests, and all he asks is for people to suck his penis. No money, no nothing, just if you suck his cock, wham, bam, you're in for a happy...
We only got to page 3.
If you guys want to switch, then do it. We're down for whatever.
That's a lot. That's like almost an hour back.
It is. We can just continue from here, and people can just accept it.
Yeah, or you could read my book.
Does everyone at home want to read Matthew's book? I mean, Emma says she doesn't mind.
Yeah, Emma says she doesn't mind. We've got 4 people in now. How are we feeling about stuff, people? Because I really don't want to go back so many pages.
I know. But we will if you want it. If you want us to suffer, we'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll do it. Anything that the viewers got. We've got 3 people in. Let us know. Do you want us to read back what you've missed? Or do you want to continue here? Or do you want to read Matthew's book? Yeah.
Emma wants to read my book.
I'm down for Matthew's book. Well, that's 1 vote.
Democracy Manifest.
Yes, we'll wait for your further votes. I wish we could make a poll, but yeah, if
I wish we could make a poll as well, but
that'd be amazing.
I think we're too little. Oh no, we can do a poll right there.
All right, nice.
Just
do it.
Yeah, put in the ask a question.
Ask a question.
Should we read Matthew's book? Yes or no? And then start poll.
There we go.
There we go. Nice. Democracy Manifest.
So if you want to read Matthew's book, we'll read Matthew's book. And then that kind of get out of the punishment as well. Because holy shit, this book is so bad. It is really bad. 100% says yes. Buy his book, people.
Democracy Manifest.
I guess we're reading your book then.
Democracy
prevails.
Oh, wait. It's still early doors. We've had 3 votes cast.
Yeah.
So I think that's Kyle, Emma, and myself.
Yeah, voting for yourself, I see.
Well, democracy. Everyone's allowed a voice.
Yeah,
Everyone
definitely.
can vote except you, I guess.
I guess I'll vote in.
Yeah.
I guess you'll know what I'm gonna vote for.
You want more of the smut.
No, I'm gonna vote for your book. To be fair, I really, really don't like reading this book. It's so bad.
I think it's pretty excellent.
There we go. Live chat.
You clicked on the wrong thing.
Where's the poll?
You need to go into the actual stream. That's not the stream.
That's not the stream.
No,
Oh,
that's the previous live video. There you go.
There we
That's
go.
the stream.
there we go. I voted as well. Fantastic.
Tell us what you want. We got
It's a good book. Yeah, Matthew's book is pretty good.
Yeah.
Can You Taste the Color
We'll give
Orange
it-
is a way better read than this.
We'll give it like 5 minutes.
We'll give it 5 minutes.
5 minutes on the old Polaroony.
Yep. And if you people want to read Matthew's book, how long are we gonna read your entire book?
We'll read the whole, which is longer actually than this book. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. We'll
Yeah, we could just read whatever.
We'll just fucking read out.
We'll read anything. We'll find out what people want.
My book is like 100 pages longer than
It's
this
like
one.
260 or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, this is only 130.
Yeah. And we're 14% through it, so we could get through this one faster. But I'm assuming it wouldn't be as painful to read your book.
Well, you don't know.
No, yeah, maybe I'm like, I fucking hate this. Alright, I'm glad the connection's way better as well. Seems to be everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, no, I think I
Perfect.
fixed it. I think I 100% fixed it.
Definitely. Did seem like it was a dongle issue.
And your bitrate and stuff was wrong. I had to change a bunch of technical
Sean has to
settings.
record the audiobook version.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do it live.
Yeah, we'll do it live for you, everyone. Sean doesn't read smut, he reads even more smut.
Mine's a smut.
Yeah, yeah. It's more erotic than you could have possibly imagine. We have still 100% on yes for reading Matthew's
Yeah,
book.
I think we're gonna probably end up getting.
There's
to,
6 people now watching.
to read the book. If you'll have to purchase it, but I'll send you the money for it, so you're not just
Okay,
buying my book. But
no worries.
I'll have to do that off on this webcam so that people don't see your bank details
Yeah, exactly.
on stream.
Don't see what's going on.
You'll have to go on and buy the Kindle version if that's what people are. If that's democracy has spoken. 5 votes in, and 2 minutes left until we're gonna close the poll.
So just go to Amazon then, I take it?
Yeah, and then just buy the Kindle version of the book.
Perfect.
Wow, you're
I
really
can't
good at typing. I wish everybody could see how good at typing he was just then.
There we go. Can you taste the color orange? Does not seem like it's...
It's right there. Scroll down like one bit.
Oh yeah, it's there.
Yeah. And then Kindle edition.
It's like £4.
Sci-fi smut. Yeah, you know it.
Sci-fi smut indeed. Buy now. There we go. That's my bank details. Verify and pay to this address. Perfect. We're buying Matthew's book. I bought your book a second time. Actually, now that you're here, I need you to sign my version of your book.
Only if you pay me.
I just bought your book again. What do you want from me?
I want to be paid. Read now for Kindle.
Yeah, read
Web.
now.
Click that. Okay, let me. Okay, we'll go back.
All right, everybody. I'm just advertising for Matthew stuff now.
Yeah, that's your real punishment.
My real punishment is to promote you.
Look at that, baby.
Perfect. This is Matthew Reed's book, Can You Taste the Color Orange? Ultimate Sci-Fi Smut. Very sexy. Very sexy book. I hope everyone at home is excited for this fantastic, beautiful... It's actually a really good read. Very good
It's a
character
silly
stuff.
time.
Yeah, it's good world
It's
building as
silly.
well.
You do me a favor, and can you close the poll?
Oh, yes, of course.
So, click on it, end poll.
There we go.
Well,
Votes are
democracy
in.
has spoken.
And now we're going to read Matthew Reed, Can You Taste the Color Orange?
Oh, look at him. He's
Look
so
at that.
cute. Look at that cute little guy.
It says author. He's the author man. I
Wow.
remember when you had that mustache as
With
well.
Magnificent mustache.
Yes, Matthew Reed is a creative genius.
Look
His
at
use
him.
of the English dictionary is phenomenal. Some would say
so.
it's even good. Others say competent. Most don't say anything. He is the greatest science fiction author of all time and has no ego about it. He also definitely
He sounds humble.
did not write this
That
part.
seems like a really humble guy. He didn't
Only
even-
heroes write stuff like that.
Didn't even write it. I wonder who wrote that bit.
Yeah,
If it
yeah,
wasn't him.
that's strange. Yeah, he
wrote
specifically
that?
said he didn't write this bit.
Yeah, so who did?
Yeah, crazy. Can you taste the color orange? Copyright stuff. Perfect. All the dedication to my mother and the greatest general of all time, James.
Yeah.
Acknowledgements. Huge thank you to Sean and Scott. Hell yeah, this is me and Scott mentioned. The first people to ever finish the book and gave me the motivation to keep writing. Alright, everybody, we're gonna
Okay.
jump into this until you get sick of it, or we'll just read until whenever, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll just read until whenever.
Such a humble guy. I know Matthew is a very humble gentleman. He's not got any ego about him, and I have no idea who wrote that bit for you, but I'm not
I don't-
invested in anything.
What do you mean for me?
Yeah.
I don't look like that dude.
Yeah, that's true, actually. You've got a massive beard. That guy's just got
That
a
guy just had
dorky mustache. Yeah.
yeah.
Chapter 1. Time is tricky.
I'm
Yes.
gonna change the title of the stream.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If Sean reads full sack, everyone's gonna be like, what is going on? Sean reads, can you taste the color orange now?
Oh wait, hang on.
Can you change
Keep
it?
the people entertained while I do this real quick.
Well, Matthew's going to be changing the title of the book, whereas I'm going to be chatting to you guys until it is sorted. I hope everyone who hasn't read the book is excited to see what Matthew has written, because this is his first ever book that he's gotten published, which is pretty exciting.
it's okay.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
The stuff I'm working on now is better.
Yeah, but obviously you were very proud of making this at the time, and obviously your ideas have flashed since then. But yeah, the new stuff that he's working on is pretty good, and I'm excited to see what you do with that stuff, and
There
be
we
crazy
go.
to see when it comes out as well.
The stream title has changed.
Perfect, everybody. And we've got 7 people watching at the moment. We've got 7
Book's
views.
even more popular.
Yeah, more popular than smut. Let's just dive in. I missed something. What happened to the smut? Well,
Democracy
Bailey,
happened.
Democracy happened. We hated reading it. Matthew hated it more than I did. I also did not like it very much. But we decided Democracy. We had a poll, and we've decided we're gonna read Can You Taste the Color Orange instead until everybody gets sick of it, or maybe people just want to see us read the entire thing, which in theory is longer than the smut book. So doing so, we'll see what happens. We could be here till much later on in the night, so hopefully you're all ready to strap in. I'm gonna take a drink of water because I've been talking
The
for
build-up,
ages.
the
Yeah,
build-up.
yeah. I hope you're all waiting for the anticipation.
everyone's
Don't be
already
reading.
read.
You're not allowed
Yeah,
to read
don't
it.
read this
You have to
page
listen
yet.
to what I have to say. Psych smut. Don't you know it, Kyle? Time is tricky. It is hard to describe time.
Oh, come on, put some emphasis on your voice. Let's go.
All right, now
Narrate
you're
it
interested
for
into
me.
it now,
Come
are
on,
you?
Jesus.
It's time to describe time. What?
It's what? It's time to describe time.
It is time. It is hard. It is hard to describe time, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen. What is it? How it acts? Yet it is something that each of us experience in uniform. Everything is going to happen for the first time and happen for the last time.
You know what's interesting is I hate this as well.
You really? This is you're gonna cringe at all of this then. Brilliant. You're like, God, what a shit writer.
Yeah.
Often at the same time. It is a blending of paradoxes that is fun to try to wrap your head around. Although if you try for too long, you may end up dizzy. Time in the afterlife is more confusing. It both isn't moving and is. Everything has happened. Everything is brand new. Everything never happened. Everything is constantly happening. And if you were to come across a clock in the afterlife, of which there are little, the face of the clock would simply say, yes, in exquisite bold lettering. It could be a digital clock, an analog clock, even an imaginary clock. The time in the afterlife is yes! Seeing the arms of an analog clock from the word yes is always impressive. To put it simply, time doesn't exist. Time doesn't make sense. Only yes. Rack's lives in the afterlife.
Lives in the afterlife, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Rax lives in the afterlife. The gender isn't a concern for afterlifers. Were, are, and have been blue. Much like everyone else, they have and will have green hair. Like everyone else, Rax had no idea who their parents were. Like everyone else, they had woken up one day and got to work. Like everyone else, Rax worked in the single most exciting part of the afterlife. No, that's not right. Rax worked in the single most boring part of the afterlife. They were surrounded by nothing but flies. The other book was better. The other book was better, we've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. There was nothing but files and files for those files and files for those files. They didn't mind not knowing any better. Ignorance is bliss and all that. The day things changed was like every other. I can't even speak
you can't
now.
Read right
can't
now.
speak
yeah,
now.
The smut ruined your brain.
Yeah. The smut has destroyed it, and I've lost my ability to read.
Maybe if we make change the font a little bit for you.
Yeah, it should be
we'll
fine.
Make it a little bit bigger for Grandpa.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Oh, now it's too big. Ignorance is bliss and all that. The day things changed was like every other. Rax woke up from their home, which had owned forever, and which had always been located on the 1,530,222nd floor of the housing wing of the afterlife, and strolled through the many blue corridors of the giant office where everything was and will be. Yeah, flies! All of the flies here, flies everywhere, all those flies and those flies. They don't mind knowing any better. Exactly. There's flies all in this book. I'm glad everyone's paying attention. I'm so glad everyone's invested in what I have to say right now.
You're a wordsmith.
Yeah, I am a god at reading. One thing to mention, around 90% of the afterlife is consistent of a blue office building and flies. That's canon, by the way. Why exactly this is the case, and no one is sure. The other 10% is utilized for mortal people who come to the afterlife posthumous? Posthumous?
Yeah, posthumous.
Posthumous? What happens to immortals that end up in the afterlife? No one is sure. It's not often they die. That 10% space of non-office building contained afterlife, however, is excellent. Rax moved through the blue building, making their way to their office, ready to put upwards of several files into more files when something...
Flies.
Yeah, it should be flies.
It
should be flies into more flies. An open door. Usually the doors weren't open, and to any other onlooker, this door was no different. But it was open a crack, an all but an imperceivable crack. This was quite the discovery for Rax. They pushed it open further and stepped into the unknown. A broom closet. Why was there a broom closet is a mystery, as there was no dust in the afterlife. Yet there Rax was, in a broom closet. A strange light was illuminating from the back of the closet, behind the mops. Rax decided not to think about why there were mops and pushed their way past them. The wooden spines hit the ground with a clank, and they felt flummoxed to find a computer screen, or what looked like one, embedded in the blue wall. Release the flies cut! I agree. I want the flies director's cut of this book. On the screen was a mortal with small square glasses that framed his small blue eyes, short brown hair, and frankly a spectacular nose. This is me. This human appeared lost. Wherever they were asking masses of other humans for directions and were pushed aside or yelled at. Rax felt a tinge of sympathy of the lovely nosed man. They zipped from the mysterious broom closet and made their way towards the center of the blue offices, where of course the navigation center of the universe is. Nobody else in the office paid Rax any attention. If they were doing something, it must be because they were supposed to. Nobody ever did anything they weren't supposed to. Rax moved through the blue doors that led onto the navigation center of the universe. The room, a giant oval, several other afterlifers, as they enjoy being called, were working away, doing something with the maps of the universe, pulling it wider and wider in every direction. They weren't sure why, but there wasn't much else to do in the room, and it felt right. No one questioned anything in the afterlife. Why would you? You have ever so many questions. Rax made their way over to a pocket-sized map at the back of the room. The map lit up a glimmering white and projected an image from its surface, allowing Rax to manipulate the map as they pleased. No one appeared to mind. They rapidly zoomed into Earth to the location where they had seen the bespectacled man with the nose. He had been mentioning something about an organization of real and new great energies and sciences. Rax looked them up on the map. It was a smart map. They found a facility that mustn't belong to them and drew a less smart map, more of a classic map, on a modest piece of fabric that was sitting on the table. Perhaps someone had been eating lunch in here. On the other hand, no one eats lunch in the afterlife. They made their way back to the broom closet and tried speaking to the computer screen. The man with square glasses and a perfect nose couldn't hear them. The technology on Earth hadn't caught up to that of the afterlife. Rax mused for a moment. Considering their options, something wasn't making them want to help this man. Perhaps it was because no one else was. Then they remembered the creation chamber, 3 levels below the 3rd floor. Floor numbers stopped making sense after a while in the afterlife. I'm glad that wasn't my dyslexia kicking in. It is an infinite space after all.
Interesting fact. That 3rd floor part.
I remember you telling me about this.
When I was getting the book done through with like my editor and stuff. I had to fight so fucking hard to get that line in. They kept trying to change it to be like, "Are you sure you don't mean third?" And I was like, "No, I mean third." Look, I wrote this whole fucking thing.
Yes. Nothing makes sense in the afterlife, but you're trying to make it make sense. Yeah, it's so funny they kept trying to change it. They obviously did not get the concept at all. Yeah. Floor numbers stop making sense after a while in the afterlife. It is an infinite space after all. For clarification, the 3rd floor is usually located between the bakery and the 22,151,109th 4th. Yeah, 0.4th window. Sometimes, however, it isn't there at all. It's best not to worry about it. Rax made their way to the creation chamber, usually reserved for someone who fancied a specific kind of donut or an eccentric fancy coffee. Release the 3rd cut.
I like an eccentric fancy coffee.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? Thankfully, it was empty when Rax arrived. They made their way into the surprisingly modest room and pressed the flashing buttons on the creation machine that stood in front of them. I just realized we're going to have to change the posts on PGH's Instagram and Facebook. John reads smart. Here's Count is the color orange.
The title explains everything.
Yeah. Creation machines are like 3D printers but work at a subatomic level. Rax, in truth, had a theory that all of creation was the product of a much larger creation machine, programmed by some unknown hidden entity, but most people laughed at this idea. This was the afterlife, after all. How could there be more after this? Rax pressed the buttons and tried their best to imagine exactly what it was they were needing. Creation machines worked mainly on imagination. It's around a 75-25th split on imagination and science, and they never once stopped to think about their actions. Everything they were doing seemed right, as if this was what Rax had been supported to be doing since they arrived in the afterlife. Eventually it was done. Out of a minuscule tube at the bottom, a glowing purple orb was deposited. Rax picked it up gingerly.
Yeah.
They had created a mini interdimensional transportation tool, an MITT. A MIT. They took the MIT back to the broom closet and approached the computer screen. The person with glasses was still asking strangers for assistance, but to no prevail, Rax took a breath, wanting this to work. 3rd time lucky, am I right? Way, that's so funny. They grabbed the map they had been drawn earlier and focused on where the man was located. They rolled up the map and slowly pushed it through the MIT. They were happy to see the man get his map, even if it did hit him in the face harder than intended. After that, Rax found that they enjoyed helping mortals and decided to work full-time in the broom closet with the MIT. Nobody appeared to mind or notice. Trone was still a peaceful, humble town that nobody thought twice about. It was a tremendous place to raise children, the exact textbook definition of a classic quiet town. Yeah, I know exactly where you based this off of, the rural kind of area. Of it's interesting. It's fun to see as well. Troon had its own shop and 2 schools, 1 primary and 1 secondary. It's all you could ask for in a small little quiet town. It had next to no crime, the odd domestic dispute here and there, but nothing major. There is one thing in Trone that is peculiar. That would be the unfinished business centre, proposed as the first step in finally connecting Trone to the city and turning it from a still, peaceful, humble town into an energetic, alive, and beating part of the city. They finished 1 building before stopping work entirely and never speaking of the scheme again. The people of Trone were relieved by this. Nobody could remember being consulted, even once, or whatever. They grabbed the map they had drawn earlier and focused on where the man was located. Have I skipped?
You've jumped to the top of the page instead of turning the page.
Oh, whoopsie. Not that I thought it was like, that makes no sense, but oh well. Well, I might have questioned, this is Matthew's book. I'm not questioning the man, it got published. Though they thought it was a good idea, nobody dared question it when it suddenly ended. People were happy to count what few blessings they got. Against all odds, a business did set up shop in that office space, and it did very well for itself. The citizenry of Trone in no longer time accepted the new office with open arms, and quickly it became integrated into the community, becoming part of the fabric of Trone itself. This office space, the single anomaly in the otherwise implausibly boring small town, is where Roger Conan worked. Now, Roger Conan was somewhere in the early years of his 30s. He had stayed in Trone his entire life. He had never known any different, nor did he want to. He had a wondrous routine set up for himself. Wake up, get washed, get dried, get dressed, have breakfast, 2 slices of toast, lightly buttered, leave for work, do work, finish work, head home, get home, have dinner, clean dishes, watch TV, finishing watching television around 9 p.m, go to bed, repeat. He loved this routine. If you were to find yourself in Trone, although the likelihood of that nowadays is low, but if you were to somehow find yourself in Trone and manage to ask somebody what it was exactly that the business did to earn money, nobody would be able to give you a satisfactory answer, because nobody knew to a satisfactory level. Roger, who had worked in the building practically since it had opened its doors, had no clear-cut idea of what it was exactly that the business did to earn money. He wasn't even that certain on what his job was. Imagine that. Doing your entire job and you're like, I don't fucking really know what's going on.
That's me every day.
Yeah. Yeah, am I right? As far as Roger had managed to deduce in his time working in the office, his job consisted of entering either a 0 or a 1 into numerous spreadsheets. How fun. Given no explanation as to why. He had a qualification in business relationships and key in coding of incorporating assets to further boost revenue on a yearly scale. Something so boring, a great deal of you felt your eyes lose focus as you tried to read that, which is normal reaction, don't worry. But to Roger, however, it was everything. He would sit in his cubicle at his desk in the office space of a building that stood alone in the town of Trone, and he would press either a 0 or a 1. Total revenue of gaining. That was an easy one. Expanding our corporate assets in a synergetic and business-like way. Well, that was a 0 if Roger had ever seen one. That reminds me of Moss from IT, right? Hell yeah. Roger Conan was a somewhat average-looking man. He had short brown hair and wore small, square glasses. The most peculiar feature of Roger was also his nose. See? I'm Roger.
Yeah.
And it was based off of me, the whole inspiration. I can see it completely clear as day. This guy's me.
Yeah.
It beamed off his face if it belonged to someone else, and he was simply borrowing it. It was a spectacular nose, thank you, perfectly curved. Not short and stubby, not long and narrow. It was impeccable. I'm glad you noticed. Warms my heart. Roger stayed on Crescent Street, the main street in Trone, and confusingly, it wasn't a crescent at all, but a straight road. The name confused everyone of Trone. Ooh, Roger! Hell yeah. It wasn't a crescent at all, but a straight road. The name confused everyone of Trone, but nobody ever thought to change it. After a while, things just became comfortable. If you were living in Trone, chances were you liked comfort. Roger's house was cozy. It had one small bedroom, one small bathroom, one small living room, and one medium-sized kitchen. It was all Roger ever needed and all he ever wanted. He was happy with it. Caitlin Cook lived across the street from Roger. Like most people of Trone, she worked in the office. Although only on weekends, her week was mainly spent at home, by herself. Caitlin had grown up in Trone and inherited her house, which was the largest one on Crescent Street, after both her parents died in a bizarre accident that involved their car and a cargo ship falling from the sky. She had never been able to understand the full story that the authorities told her, but it took away any strength she might have had to leave Trone. Caitlin had extravagant yet graceful long blonde hair, as if she was a princess from an old fairy tale. She was covered head to toe in freckles and had a modest mole just above her right eyebrow. While Roger and Caitlin were neighbours and lived exactly across the street from one another and worked the same office building, they had never properly formally met. On the odd occasion, where they would catch one another's eye, they had perfected a routine, a simple, elegant nod with a slight smile, not so much as to appear over-eager, but not too little as to appear unfriendly. Really, it was an art form in its own right. Ooh, excuse me. It was
hang on. Here's your camera. It seems to have frozen.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder why the camera has frozen.
I don't know. It did that earlier, didn't it?
Yep.
That is interesting.
Hopefully you can all still hear us. It might be wild that we don't know how long we've been frozen for there.
Yeah, let's try that again.
See how we do. Maybe it might not come back on.
What the fuck? Why is there always something wrong?
Why is it going wrong?
Why is there always something? Why is there always something? I'm gonna die.
It's brutal. This is brutal.
Oh my god, man.
I know, this is painful. Oh,
that's our frozen faces.
Yeah, this is our beautiful, elegant frozen faces.
Yeah.
At least that's come back. It was concerning that nothing was coming back.
Yeah. Oh my fucking god.
This is painful. Oh, are we back? No. Yep, I see that we are currently... Yeah, no camera. No camera. Oh, there is no camera.
Ugh.
No camera. We're in the void.
I thought we were doing so well.
We were. It was too good to be true.
The flies
are listening. I agree.
There we go.
We're back.
I'm back.
Hell
we're
yeah.
Back.
We're back.
Fuck
better
me.
than ever. All right. I don't know where I was. Oh, yeah. It was 5 a.m. Brutal. I know. You're telling me, Bailey. You're telling me. Nothing seems to want to go right. It was 5 a.m. It was a strangely quiet morning. The birds had decided to sleep in. Hopefully you guys are still awake. I'm sorry if my voice has bored all of you to death while reading it, but we're all trying our best.
You're about halfway through this chapter.
Yeah.
Since we've had the interruption, if you want to get a drink, you could get a drink. I can feel your voice getting a bit.
Yeah, I'll take a drink
dry.
just now.
Yeah.
It is talking constantly.
Oh yeah.
It is a lot,
Yeah.
especially on a live stream. There we go. Whew. Now, yes, it was 5 a.m. It was a strangely quiet morning. The birds had decided to sleep in, figuring if everyone else was, why shouldn't they? And silence enveloped Trone. Nobody was awake.
Why are you whispering?
Am I whispering?
Yeah.
You're doing well, thanks, Emma. I need the motivation to keep going. I'm so not bored.
Not bored.
Glad. I'm glad.
So he's not.
He's not bored. So he's
he
bored.
is bored.
Yeah, he's very bored. Thanks, Kyle. Glad I could be very entertaining. Roger was already showered. Wherever. There we go. Yeah.
So he's not bored. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's just
Whatever.
go here. Roger was already showered and enjoying a delicious slice of toast.
Just go from.
Yeah, we'll just read the whole thing. I should just go back to page 2. Yeah, you go back to page 1.
Go from. You're on page 15 before.
It was about here.
Impeccable.
Yeah, here we go. We were
no,
here.
You weren't at 5 in the morning.
Yeah,
it was from his own right. Yeah,
it was
5
here.
in the morning.
Yeah, let's do that again, folks. I hope you're ready for round 3 of this sentence.
It was 5
in the morning. It was a strangely quiet
what time
morning.
in the morning was it?
It was 5 in the morning. The birds had decided to sleep in, figuring if everyone else was, why shouldn't they? And silence enveloped Trone. Nobody was awake, nobody except for Roger Conan. Roger was already showered and enjoying a delicious slice of toast. Lightly buttered, loves his routine. He had finished off his second and final slice when he had heard the clank of his letterbox closing. This was a curious thing. The post didn't usually arrive until after 10, not long after Roger had left for work, so as anyone would when posters jostled through their door.
Sean, your reading abilities are questionable. I agree.
It is.
I agree.
It is questionable.
It's interesting to see.
There's a lot of pressure to be reading and streaming at the same time, so bear with me, guys.
You're an actor.
Yeah. I am an actor, but it's been so long since I've had to read a full book. Also live and also with my voice.
Flies in the morning.
No, it was flies in the morning. They're everywhere. They're just everywhere in the story. That's when he saw it. The thing that would forever change his life. A pamphlet. The pamphlet that Roger picked up off his doormat and held in his hands was rather crap looking. The front cover was brandished?
Yeah, brandished.
Yeah, brandished with I'm doubting myself now. The scientist pointing directly as the viewer, much like old wartime propaganda. The letter above was large, glaring, and written with a hideous font. Can you taste the color orange? Usually Roger would throw rubbish like this out and never think of it again. But there was something about this pamphlet, something strange, something deep inside of him told him to read on. Listening to whatever it was within him that told him to keep reading. Roger opened the pamphlet and was greeted with a large wall of words, accompanied with stock images of scientists, scattered seemingly at random across the page. Can you where did it go there? Can you taste the color orange? If so, we'd wish to speak with you. You must be able to taste orange, not smell or see, but taste. Taste. You must be able to taste it. We don't want people with synesthesia. We want people who can taste orange. If you fit these requirements, contact us. Return this letter to us. Address found on back. We'll be in touch. Sincerely, the Organization of Real and New Great Energies and Sciences. Roger was never one to lie. He found the whole idea of lying so strange and pointless. In fact, he hadn't told a proper lie since he was 12 and figured that he might be able to get out of not doing his homework. The lie immediately got out of hand and he ended up doing on a somewhat confusing rant about a troll and a spider. It actually would have made for a rather compelling book. It was something he tried to not think about. He had found the whole situation embarrassing. Since then, he had never lied. This is why he found it strange that he was seriously considering replying to this pamphlet. This obvious spam mail. This literal waste of paper. He was considering it. The peculiar force inside of him that made him read the pamphlet was doing a hell of a job convincing him to reply as well. Roger tried to justify it in his head. 1. It seemed like nonsense. They probably wouldn't reply. 2. Something about the pamphlet spoke to him on a spiritual level. 3. He couldn't taste orange. Now 4. Could he lie about it? 5. Unsure. Before Roger managed to finish the argument with himself, he was alarmed to discover his body had decided to make the decision for him. He'd found himself standing in front of a crimson postbox with his hand releasing its grasp from the pamphlet. It was done. He had sent back the reply without realizing he had left the house and posted the letter. He had done it, just straight up autopilot mode. Things were about to change. A lot for Roger. He needed a cup of tea. Across the street from Roger's home, Caitlin found herself picking up the same ugly, poorly crafted pamphlet. She gave it one glance, ripped it and threw it in the bin, cursing spam mail under her breath as she did. The curse didn't work. There has only been one instance in history where someone managed to actually curse the post successfully. And then here we go, into more exhibition. Tyler Beckenbone was his name, and he lived in 1845 in the south of England. The postal service had been around for about 5 years, and everyone thought it was pretty radical. Well, everyone except Tyler, who didn't think it was radical at all. He thought about the congregation of his modest village, and also a large majority of the world weren't receiving enough post. They needed more. so he set about creating a curse, as of course any young male would. He practiced the dark arts, and by using a goat and several unopened letters that he had stolen from neighbors, Tyler cast a spell, cursing the world to forever receive useless letters. There was one peculiar side effect from the spell. Whenever someone was delivered a piece of post that they did not request or want or need, a tin of spam meat was brought into the world at the same time. Hence the name, and that's the creation of spam. Roger sat in his kitchen and slipped his exquisite cup of tea when his phone began to ring. Bring, 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 bring! He stared at it, an uneasy feeling growing within. It couldn't be, could it? It could! It was! How could it be? He had posted the letter only a few short moments ago. Surely it was not. It was. Roger answered the phone and was greeted by a voice that was well-spoken and well-friendly in an overly corporate way. One of the best ways, in Roger's opinion. The voice knew Roger's name and his address and sounded rather excited to talk to him. Roger barely spoke the entire conversation. It was more of a monologue, not doing his homework. I know. It is a very interesting scene that we're picturing here. The voice knew Roger's name. Yeah, I've already read this bit. Roger barely spoke the entire conversation. It was more of a monologue. It is so good to hear from you, Roger. The voice on the phone exclaimed in a corporate joy. If you could head towards the city and follow the westernmost road all the way to our facility, that'd be great. We can be hard to spot sometimes, but keep going west and you should find us. Wednesday the 23rd works for us. We'll see you then. The phone beeped as the voice on the other line ended the call, either not realizing or not caring that Roger hadn't actually agreed to anything yet. Wednesday the 23rd was 4 days away. Roger fell into his chair, overwhelmed by the conversation. The next few days were a blur. Sunday, he didn't do much. Some light shopping for groceries. It would be the last time he shopped for groceries. Monday came and Roger went to work as he would on any other Monday of the year. The one difference was that his mind was preoccupied with the thought of travelling to the city on Wednesday. Roger filled out 83 spreadsheets that day, every single one of them marked 0. He never realized he did this, nor did anybody else. Tuesday came and Roger's heart seemed to have moved permanently into his throat. He spent the entire day staring at one spreadsheet. Business opportunities for small businesses to synergize into big business. His mind was scattered, worrying about missing work tomorrow. He had never missed work. He had never taken a sick day. Could he do it? Could he drive into the city? The city was like any other, large and dominating to the surrounding landscape. It was riddled with pollution and crime, and homelessness was rampant despite the seemingly endless supply of buildings. Roger found himself panicking. His breath was uncontrollable. The world around him became a hazy blur. He ran into the bathroom and locked himself into a stall, his breath echoing off the pure white tiles, sweat dripping down the back of his neck. He needed to calm down fast, his eyes closed. "It's okay, Roger," his mother told him with a soft whisper. "I know it's scary. Just close your eyes, and count to 10. If you do that, if you count to 10, everything will be okay." She continued, speaking softly to Roger and kissing him gently on his forehead. Roger did as he was instructed and closed his eyes and counted to 10. His breath became steadier, and slowly but surely he regained control of his body. His eyes opened. His mother was gone, and he was back in the bathroom stall. His thoughts lingered on his mother for a moment longer. He had lost her a few years back. Natural causes. She had lived a long, mostly happy life. To Roger, however, it still felt like she was taken too soon. Like most people his age, childhood felt like it was so long ago, and seemed to have passed in no time at all. In almost a blink, he had gone from being a young boy at school, playing tag or zombies, which was essentially tag, but had the added benefit of imaginary guns and death.
Interestingly, that's a real bit from my just regular life. That's what we played when I was in primary school.
Yeah.
It was zombies.
Nice.
Which was exactly that.
Perfect.
Just tag, but with guns.
Nice. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. I played a lot of tag growing up as well. Nostalgia began to seep its way into Roger's mind, and he escaped into the past. Things used to be easy back then. Oh, yeah, don't need to tell me. He remembered his childhood friend, Will. Oh, from his friends. Oh, yeah. He remembered his childhood friends. I swear I can talk. Will, whose glasses seemed to always
Can you
break
read?
in the strangest ways. No, I don't think I can. One time, Will swore someone reached their hand out the window of a moving car and slapped them off his face, but no one was around to see it. Margaret, the first girl Roger ever loved. He remembered telling her how he fell under the lights of the Tron Drive-In Theatre, since closed down, and the pain he felt was when she rejected him. He wondered what happened to the two of them, and whether or not they thought about Roger as he thought about them. British Bulldogs, yeah, I remember that was a game as well, Cal, that was very popular, especially when we were younger. The last time anyone had heard from Will, he was running down the streets of Trone bare-ass naked, shouting about how the world was going to end and how he saw into the future. He vanished into some nearby woods and is considered missing and presumed dead. Margaret left Trone when she was 17, moved away with her family to a foreign country on the other side of the world. She didn't stay in contact with anyone. She never thought about Roger anymore. The nostalgia had wrapped itself around Roger like a warm blanket, something comforting in an otherwise anxiety-filled week. It wouldn't be long before Roger started to look back on sitting in the office building, in his cubicle with a sense of nostalgia. The past was promptingly thrust out of his mind. However, when he was patted on the shoulder by a co-worker, someone who Roger was certain was called something like John or Joe or Peter. "Goodbye," John, Joe, Peter said as they left work for the last time ever. "Goodbye?" Roger thought to himself as he watched John, Joe, Peter walk away. "Goodbye?" Roger looked down at the clock on that lay on his desk, a small wooden analog clock he had built for himself when he was 16. One of the first things he and Will bonded over. He was always good with his hands, and the clock still functioned perfectly, something he was quite proud of. Sure enough, the clock read 5 o'clock. Home time. Wednesday had arrived. Roger got himself out of bed. He got dressed. He had breakfast, he watched a bit of the news, something about the government doing something terrible, and he got into his car. So far, everything was normal. He could deal with it. Roger's car was minuscule, uncomfortable, old, and an off shade of orange that was more rust than paint as this point. But you could struggle to tell unless you were studying his car for every imperfection, as Roger often did. He stared at the steering wheel. This was it. This was the day where he would do something different, something new, live a little. He closed his eyes. He counted to 10, he turned the ignition, the engine roared with excitement. His car knew the plan. He pulled out of the driveway and turned, oh, your phone is
Damn
possessed by
ghosts.
ghosts, yeah, and turned right instead of left, away from his work. Roger Cohen was going to the city. As Roger drove, he passed Caitlin, who was struggling to hold several full bags of shopping at the same time. She looked exhausted. Part of Roger wanted to stop his car, get out and help her take her shopping into the house, but another part of him didn't want to break their long-standing tradition. That part won. Roger gave Caitlin the mandatory head nod with a slight smile, not too much as to seem over-eager, but not too little as to seem unfriendly, and he drove past her. Finally, Roger left the town in which he had spent his entire existence on the planet. He would never return. Now, Tron is only 40 minutes or so away from the city. That is why this part of the story may seem hard to believe. You may ask yourself, why did Roger stop? Why couldn't he just wait? Vampires? What is this book even about? There are all stupid questions. Roger was halfway between Tron and the city when he found himself to be implausibly hungry, unbelievably hungry, unfathomably hungry, so hungry someone would question if he had breakfast or not. Which he did, which makes him being so hungry that much stranger. But alas, it was just one of the many mysteries of life. Thankfully for Roger, he was approaching a stop. There was a building, not a nice-looking one. Mind you, calling it rough wouldn't do it justice. The windows were covered in dust and grime. The wooden steps to the entrance splintered and ugly. The paint cracked and peeling. It did have a neon green sign on the front saying, "Food." However, that was enough for Roger's stomach. It gave him no other choice but to pull into the strange restaurant. Roger climbed out of his car, I remember this bit, and entered the rundown building. He took no time to notice the other cars parked around him, or the faces staring at him through the grimy windows. The place had a thick atmosphere of ruggedness and a musk of death. Silence washed over the place as Roger stepped through the door. It was fairly busy. Booths laid across the spacious floor, and the whole building appeared much bigger on the inside than it seemed on the outside. Each booth was packed full of people, all of whom stared at Roger cautiously. They were all rather pale and sickly looking. Some were covered in scars, some seemed exhausted as if they had been on the run for weeks and had finally reached a safe haven. But Roger's stomach told him he probably shouldn't mention it and should just get food instead, and did so with a full audible gurgle. He placed his tiny, seamy frame between two humongous, bulking men who, again, were rather pale. "You lost, honey!" I like that for the waitress's voice. Yeah. The waitress asked Roger from behind the counter. Her long blonde hair looked strained and dirty, and her skin was also pale and sickly like everyone else's.
Her voice deep and
threatening. "Just looking for a bite to eat," Roger said, using as much false confidence as he could to mask the uneasy feeling. Well, because she has a deep, booming voice he had growing in the back of his neck, he could feel everyone's eyes on him. The bulky figure to Roger right let out a muted laugh. "Okay, what do you want, hon?" the waitress replied, giving Roger a sympathetic look, opening her notepad to take his order. "Coffee? Chips?" she asked, trying to indicate she wanted this to be a simple order so Roger could leave sooner rather than later. That'd be good," Roger replied, nervously looking around the establishment, matching eyes with everyone who was staring at him, which at this point was everyone. Roger cleared his throat as little as silence clung to the walls like a spider clinging to its web. "Nice day today?" he said. "Oh, nice day today?" he said awkwardly, wincing at his own words after saying them. "Yeah," the bulky figure to Roger's left replied. "Just lovely. Eat up." Everyone has the same voice. All vampires, canonically have the same voice. The waitress said to Roger, handing him his plate of chips and mug of coffee, and Roger did as he was instructed. He scoffed down the food as fast as he could. I would too if everyone sounded the same here. I'd be so scared. Feeling uncomfortable about the silence in the establishment, there was no doubt that it was caused by his being here. And he drank his coffee in one gulp, something that his throat was not happy about in the least. "Thank you," Roger said, before throwing down a handful of change in cash. "Keep the change," he added, before leaving and never looking back. It was one of the most uncomfortable meals Roger had ever had, but then again, most meals surrounded by vampires tend to go slightly differently. Or maybe that's what you've been told to believe. On his way out of the rundown diner, Roger passed a strange-looking individual. He never managed to get a good look at their face, but they wore a long brown trench coat and a wide color-matching cowboy hat. Roger walked right past them, managing in the last moments to dodge bashing shoulders with the stranger, and decided to put the entire establishment into a box in the back of his mind and continue on his journey into the city. I'm watching Wazowski, always watching. Oh my god, I just cackled. Good flies. Brilliant. I'm glad everyone is watching and enjoying and having a good time. The unusual figure stepped through the doors of the diner. The eyes of the vampires inside lit up with fear. The two bulky men at the counter tried to move back and attack the trench coat-wearing stranger, but weren't fast enough and two stakes in their hearts as a result. Everyone else was too afraid to move. Some found courage in their last moments, but it was no use. The stranger left the building a smoldering pile of ash by the time they were finished with everyone inside. Roger didn't witness any of it. He was mindlessly driving down the motorway. At long last, he'd entered the city. Immediately, he started to feel miserably lost in its grandness. He thought back to his conversation with the very eager and corporately polite voice on the phone. They had told him to head west. West? The issue Roger was having was he wasn't entirely sure where west was. Every direction seemed to lead into the same endless stream of buildings and people. It wasn't long before he became frustrated at this and parked his car and climbed out. Roger attempted to approach the public to ask if they could do the simplest of kindness and help. Perhaps someone knew which direction west was from where he stood. Alas, Roger was met with one of two responses. Either the strangers would pretend Roger was completely invisible, or they would make it very clear to Roger that they were aware of him and make it even clearer how much they didn't like the fact, using several disgusting and insulting words. Roger really wasn't a fan of the city. Then again, against all believable odds, Roger was hit in the face with a map. Time is tricky. Where the map had come from, Roger wasn't sure in the
All
slightest.
the way back at the start of the book.
Yeah, crazy. But peeling it from his face and looking down at it, he saw a highlighted route with the words written above saying, "Follow this road." Roger looked at the map. More. Could it be? Who wanted him to have this strange map? Where did it come from? The map was made of what felt like paper, and yet had the strangest scent attached to it, one which Roger's perfect nose seemed to enjoy. New car smell. Roger had never smelt a map that smelled like a new car before. Thinking about it, Roger had never smelt a map before. He quickly allowed the thoughts about smelling maps to leave his head and not return, deeming them to be less than helpful in almost any situation. There has been more than one instance in history where smelling a map has proven significant and of great use. There have been 3 instances. The most interesting of those, 3 cases involved a very small man getting lost on his way home after a midday stroll through the local woodland. He had brought his map with him, but it was becoming harder and harder to read as the light quickly dissipated from his surroundings. Eventually, he did make it back home, tired and wet. He had fallen into a modest-sized bog on the journey back. He had felt inspired. He spent the next year of his life studying every aspect of the woodland, the textures, the smells, the animals, and created a map laden with all these scents. So if at any point you found yourself lost in the woodland with depleting light, you simply needed to match a smell on the map with the smell around you, and hey, presto, you were halfway to figuring out the way home. The man who created the map died while beta testing a version of it, mistaking the scent of his home with the scent of a bear's den. They have peculiarly similar smells. Since that tragic accident, no one seemed eager to continue beta testing and decided carrying a lamp was a much less dangerous affair. Roger climbed back into his car and looked at the map some more. He was remarkably close to the road that he needed to get onto to get to the facility. If the map could be believed, that was. It was most certainly to be believed, with no other option other than heading home, which Roger was confident he didn't want to do just yet. Roger decided to follow the map. He pushed his small, square glasses up his perfect nose onto his round face, and he set off in the direction the mysterious paper suggested he go. It was no time at all before Roger was driving down a street that didn't look like it was part of the city. The biggest difference was the road that Roger now drove on wasn't paved at all. His small, rusty orange car bumped down the road. There wasn't another person in sight, nor a building. Roger wasn't sure he was even in the city anymore. It was a dull drive. At least corners made you think for a moment, and had the slimmest aura of risk that made them a tiny bit exciting, but a long, straight road was Roger's least favourite type of road. I like that he has favourite types of
He's
roads.
an interesting guy.
He is a very interesting fellow, for sure. Roger wondered what his favourite type of road was briefly, and then hastily shook the thought of that out of his mind. That was a line of thinking even too boring for him to manage. Finally, after what felt like several hours of driving down the same bumpy, dusty dirt road, something shined a glint into Roger's eyes. His hand raised instinctively to protect his retina from the burning bright light. Slowly his eyes adjusted, and he was able to lower his arm again. That's when he saw it. At the end of the road, Roger saw a building 10 times the size of any building he had ever seen in his life. A giant silver monument to human engineering. The building seemed to be impossible. A gargantuan pillar of glass that at every angle appeared to bend and warp into all types of shapes that could only be described as an engineer's nightmare. Roger figured he was lucky that the sun had stayed in the same position for so long, or he doubted he would even seen the building at all. And with that thought, the sun began to set as Roger pulled into the parking lot of the impossible building.
And that is
Chapter
1.
Is Mathew Roger?
No.
No?
No.
He's me. He's got my perfect nose.
But chapter 1 is very long. It's the longest chapter in the book. It's like 30 pages.
Yeah.
Which, it was originally 2 chapters.
We got 11% through. We're 30 pages into your book.
Yeah, it was originally 2 chapters, and then I decided, fuck it, I'm just going to make it 1.
Nice.
Because it shows off a bunch of stuff that becomes recurring themes later, like something's happening when you read them out of sync in time.
Yeah.
And establishing who Roger is as a character.
I like the world building from the get-go, to be fair. The fact you've immediately set up this, like, quirky, like, tone throughout the book.
Yeah, it's immediately very weird. It doesn't hold back.
Which I love and appreciate. It's just, it gets stranger and stranger as we continue reading more.
It does. If you want, I can take chapter 2.
Yeah, go for it.
We can go chapter to chapter just to save
Can you read it okay?
Save your voice a little. I've not been doing any talking.
Yeah, that's fair. But like, can you see the screen okay with all that?
Have to swap seats.
Yeah,
honestly.
perfect. Yeah, I'll have my glass of water.
Yeah.
My cup of water, and Matthew can continue with chapter 2, and I'll join in for chapter 3.
Chapters are pretty short now, so it's like.
Yeah, but to be fair, when you talk for so long, your voice gets drier and drier.
I know the pain you're going through, so.
Oh,
if you're gonna refill juice, I will take some water.
Yeah, no worries. I'll get you some water, babe.
Thanks. I won't start until you come back though, because obviously we gotta wait.
Nice. Okay, so you just entertain the people.
Yeah. So how's everyone in chat finding the book? I'm curious to know now that I'm all by myself. What do you think of Sean's narration skills? What a guy, eh? What a beautiful symphony he manages to weave with his voice. What a guy. I don't know why his webcam's framed like this, where I'm like just ahead. You don't get to see like fucking. Yeah, I'm just ahead. Fuck it. Why not? How do I wanna? What the fuck? Sorry, Sean. I'm ruining your entire setup because it's awful. Very good, comedic genius. Wow, I literally had a fortune cookie today in the Chinese we had for dinner that said your friends will try to big you up, remember to stay grounded. So apparently fortune cookies are 100% accurate, so that's interesting. Gonna have to make sure that I listen to fortune cookies from now on a bit more. But we will be starting chapter 2 pretty soon. As soon as Sean comes back. I don't know what he's doing. Being Sean. I guess you could say he flies through the book. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's pretty hilarious. Pretty darn hilarious. Fortune snitch, more like. Don't quite understand that one. Don't understand that one. But also hilarious. Also extremely hilarious. So that's cool. Keep the hilarious comments coming. I love how hilarious they are. I'm in fits of laughter at all of the hilarity. He left to get the milk. Another hilarious comment. I'm loving him. I'm loving them. And you guys are on fire. Absolute fire. Firing on all cylinders with your amazing comedic comments. Ha 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 ha. Hashtag extremely hilarious. Top fire comments, guys. Top fire comments. I think that's probably the best one yet. I'm curious to see if there can be even more funny comments to make me giggle. Make me do a tee-hee. A hoo-ha. Hee-hoo. Hilariously on fire. You know it. Sean's taking a fucking lifetime. I don't know what's taking him so long. Honestly, you wouldn't think that pouring some water would be quite the expedition. He's just left me here. It's supposed to be his punishment. I'm doing him a favor. I gave him an easier book. I'm reading half of it with him. You know? Do you think he'd be this nice to me? Not a fucking chance. No chance would he be this nice to me. I'm gonna get no appreciation for this, I bet, when it's over. If I end up losing the next Versus series, he's gonna be horrible to me. And he's not gonna remember that I was nice to him. I told you he's went to get milk. Well, I'd like him to get water, because I'm very thirsty. You know? I got quite a dry mouth. I've had an empty cup for ages, and I just couldn't be bothered moving. Sean Big Stink. Yep, he is. Just be glad you're not in the room with him. Oh shit, there he is. No, I'm not saying nothing.
I heard you downstairs, motherfucker.
Oh, and you didn't speed up. Thank you.
Yeah, I did it on purpose.
Oh my god.
I wanted you to suffer.
Oh.
You know, it'd be nice to enjoy.
Yeah, okay, let's begin chapter 2 of a very silly book. written by someone who looks surprisingly like me. Oh yeah, sorry, I moved the webcam a bit. I was fucking around with it. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. That's fine. We're just little heady boys. Oh. Chapter 2. So this is the chapter where Roger demands a blowjob. Otherwise, he's not going to go to. He's not going to go to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Chapter 2. Roger looked around the parking lot of this paradoxical building and thought it rather peculiar that he couldn't see a single other car, bike, or anything that even resembled a vehicle of any kind nearby. Was this the wrong place? Was he too late? Had everyone just left? No. Anxiety began to grow once again in the back of Roger's mind as he stepped out of his car and set towards the giant glass structure that loomed before him. The front doors of the facility were made of the purest, cleanest glass that Roger had ever laid his eyes upon. It was as if nothing were there at all, which is exactly what Roger thought until he approached and the two pristine pieces separated, allowing him to access the interior of the building. The inside of the facility was disappointing. In Roger's somewhat limited imagination, he had dreamt of something grand, bustling, with flashing lights and all sorts of beeps and boops. Your classic science fiction mystery underground secret government science facility. Yet as Roger stood inside this spectacular building, there were no flashing lights, there were no people bustling around, and there were no beeps, and certainly not any boops.
Oh, damn.
What surrounded Roger instead was a curiously large, completely white room. It was stripped of any identity it might have had if someone had left, say, a plant in the corner. How are you still reading this? What's happening?
Sean Big Stink. Amazing.
We had a bunch of technical difficulties, Scott, and now we're reading Can You Taste the Color Orange instead.
Yeah, literally.
There was a vote. Everyone voted for this. So
we're reading Matthew's book. Because the smut was really, really bad. It was also extremely boring.
In fact, the room was so bare of any signs of life, Roger was unsure where the light that filled the room even originated from. You're reading a book written by a nerd. I'll beat you up,
yeah,
bitch.
Literally.
I will beat you up.
By a nerd. Big, stinky nerd.
It certainly wasn't coming from outside. The sun was setting. Besides, the light that filled the room had a strange tinge of artificiality about it. There was one object...
Democratic flies.
There was one object of note in this boring, plain, white, miserable room, and that was located on the far side of the building, exactly opposite from where Roger stood, a reception desk. The reception desk was planted firmly against the far back of the wall. It was coated in white, causing Roger to miss it several times as he scanned his eyes through the room. It blended perfectly with the lack of design that polluted the place. Figuring there was nowhere else to go, Roger made his way towards the reception desk. His footsteps echoed throughout the empty room as he approached.
Yeah, it gets tough, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It does get tough.
As if he was walking alone in an old church, each step reverberating something ominous and something ancient back. While the building appeared modern and new, Roger could feel its age with each step.
Taking a wee bit of glass of
Taking
water.
a little sippy of water. At the reception desk there lay a single bell and not a single person. Was Roger late? Did everyone really just leave? Why was the building so tall if it only had one floor? Roger snappishly scanned the room again to see if that last question he asked himself made sense. It did. He couldn't see any other doorways or hallways or walkways in the place besides the front door. A very strange building indeed. Ding! Roger jumped at the ding. He wasn't expecting it. He dexterously determined the origin of the ding. It was because his body had become bored with all this standing around, staring at white walls, and wanted something interesting to happen. So it took it upon itself to ding the bell that sat on the reception desk.
It goes ding when there's stuff.
Roger decided he disagreed with his body and continued to look around the room with his eyes, finding the place to be a wonderful paradox of architecture. Hello!
I smell secrets. Mathew, new rapper name.
Lil Sippy Water.
That is an outstanding rapper name.
Roger's skeleton tried to leave his body. Where had that voice come from? Hello! It was most assuredly coming from behind him. Slowly, Roger turned around, unsure what to expect or how he was going to react.
Little sippy water back at it again.
Yum, yum, yum. Hello, the voice repeated again. It was feminine, soft, friendly. Roger's eyes found themselves staring into the eyes of a short brunette woman. Her eyes were fantastically green, almost unnaturally so, as if someone had decided to paint them. Hello, she said again, with a welcoming smile. This woman's posture was incredible, truly extraordinary. She stood utterly straight, like a doll that's never been removed from its packaging. How may I help you today? The woman with the green eyes asked. Roger found himself calming almost instantly. You must be Roger Cohen, the woman said after Roger failed to reply to her the first time, her smile seemingly glued to her face, unwilling to move even if she wanted it to. Yes, we've been expecting you. I'll inform the doctor that you've arrived, she continued, beaming. Oh, okay, thank you, Roger replied, predicting the woman with the green eyes to leave again, or make a phone call, or do something to indicate she was communicating with this doctor. Yet she did none of these things. She stood still, stiff, static, smiling onward. Are you okay? Roger asked, breaking the awkward atmosphere that tried to emerge in the few short moments of silence that filled the air.
Yeah, it gets tough to read.
It's all those chips I've had as well. My mouth feels kind of gross.
Yeah, I was feeling that as I was reading. I was like, and you burp, and you burp, and you burp.
I am fine, thank you, the woman replied, her eyes not looking at Roger but at the empty space above his head. My name is Carol. I am pleased to meet you, she replied, continuing her smile. Roger thought her face must hurt, but felt it best not to mention that. It's nice to meet you, Carol, Roger said, unsure how to continue the conversation with this strange woman. He had 1,000 questions in his head about the place he stood in.
It's just because the camera, because I'm trying to get in as much as possible, but I'm not even on the chair. I'm literally having to lean over.
I've been leaning on the back of the chair when I had my arm up. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
See, it's like a family photo.
We're not pals.
Yeah. That's how I was sitting the whole time.
We're close friends because we're standing next to each other.
Yeah.
That's how you tell we're good buddies.
Where the fuck even was I? It's nice to meet you, Carol, Roger said, unsure how to continue the conversation with this strange woman. He had 1,000 questions in his head about the place he stood in, about the pamphlet he received, he had questions just about everything, really. Yet his mouth was being uncooperative and refused to let any of these questions be heard. After much struggle, one query escaped his mouth. How long have you worked here? A mundane question, but a start.
I feel like Sean's battling the fact that you've moved the camera.
I moved it back.
But now I'm good.
I moved it
I'm
back.
Good. I'm
good. Always, Carol replied simply. Always? What do you mean always? Roger asked. He was both taken aback by the answer and yet found its strangeness to be right at home within the walls of the facility.
Hell yeah.
Ah, I understand your confusion, Carol responded. I am the assistant android for everyone's convenience here at the Organization of Real and New Great Energies and Sciences. Call me Carol. She continued, her answer clearly pre-programmed. It lacked any glimpses of personality she might have shown before. An android? Roger asked, his brain now overflowing with questions. They were practically leaking out of his ears. Yes, an android. Does that concern you, Mr. Cohen? If so, I am programmed to comfort you, Carol answered, continuing to smile. Roger's first impression of Carol was that she was friendly and eager to do a good job. He felt no ill will towards her, and upon discovering that she was, in truth, a robot, his opinion remained unchanged. She had done him no wrong. Why should he be concerned? He was just curious as to how she could exist. No, it doesn't concern me, Roger replied, surprised at his own openness and ability to accept new, strange things. You said earlier that you were fine. Can you feel emotions? Roger asked, the floodgates of his mouth at long last open and questions pouring outward. I am programmed to feel almost every emotion, Carol replied, smiling. The more that Roger found himself studying her face, the more slight imperfections he found in her design. Her skin didn't quite absorb light correctly, and at the right angle she seemed more plastic than flesh. Her eyes, besides the obvious glaring green that had been painted, moved with a precision that human eyes could never manage. Every emotion, Roger asked. So you could feel sad, lonely, happy, bored. Sometimes, Carol replied, if my programming dictates it. So, really you're not feeling anything at all? Roger found himself saying. You're just doing what a bunch of numbers in your head are telling you to do, he asked, further probing the existential crisis of what is feeling? Are your feelings not just chemical reactions to what you observe around you? Carol retorted. This time it wasn't pre-manufactured. There was a passion there, an energy. It left Roger stumped. While it was true, emotion could be influenced by your environment and how you interacted with things around you, surely it couldn't be that simple. There was something innately alive about emotion. Dogs felt emotions. Computers didn't. It didn't seem like something you could program. Are you happy now? Roger asked. The question of emotion was something he had never thought to ask himself. He had just enjoyed the moments as they came to him, never looking outward or inward, just accepting and enjoying. Yet, faced with a glimpse into an incredible new world, he could feel his own outlook expanding, his curiosity at long last starting to bloom. I am, Carol replied, believing the words she spoke, even managing to make her smile appear softer, more genuine, more alive. Have you ever left this place? Roger asked, gesturing to the structure that surrounded them. No, I'm afraid my jobs are far too demanding and far too plentiful to allow me to have what you would refer to as personal time, Carol answered, her way of talking once again sounding robotic, pre-programmed. Would you like some personal time? The question hung in the air like a bad fart. It lingered. It lingered longer than Roger would have liked. I am happy, Carol responded. If you would excuse me, I have other needs that require my attention. The doctor will see you soon, she speedily added. Please, have a seat, as she gestured with her hand to the large empty space that lay behind Roger. A seat? Roger asked, turning his head to look around the room. He was most certain the place was empty when he arrived. In fact, it was the only thing he was certain about since stepping foot into the building. I love the speed of that. The shot was perfect.
Thanks.
This was reaffirmed when, yet again, as he scanned his eyes across the gargantuan room he stood in, not a seat, plant, light bulb, or carpet could be found anywhere. Where do you expect me to sit? Roger asked, turning his head back again to face Carol. Except Carol was no longer there. I legit just burst with laughter at that.
Thank
Beautiful.
you, Kyle. I do try.
Hello, he asked, stunned at how she managed to disappear as rapidly as she did appear. He pondered where she went. There was no obvious place for her to go. Taking a deep breath of air and immediately releasing it again, Roger decided he had no other option than to tour around this football stadium of a room he stood in for the vain search of a chair. Perhaps they were invisible, or stuck to the ceiling, or something equally as ridiculous. Roger's mind was ready to accept anything. He made his way to the leftmost side of the enormous room, taking several minutes to reach it, and by the time he did, he decided that it wasn't worth walking to the other two walls to inspect them. He could see from where he stood that they were exactly the same as the ash-white wall he now leaned against. Roger slumped to the floor, the best seat he could find, and decided to wait for this doctor, whomever that may be, to make their appearance. 2 hours passed. It was extremely dull. Finally, after an eternity, a voice broke the silence that surrounded Roger Cohen, a high-pitched, nasally voice. Roger? Roger Cohen? The nasally voice asked, shouting from the other side of the room. The owner of the voice, who wore a white lab coat with immense, thick blue glasses and who sported a stark lack of hair on their head, marched towards Roger. It's you.
Yeah, it is me. This is me. Another character based off me.
They all look exactly like you.
Yeah, they all have my face.
Common practice when you're about to meet someone new or someone for matters of business is to stand and shake their hand. Roger was usually a passionate believer in this, always wanting to make an excellent first impression. This time, however, Roger Cohen did not stand. Roger Cohen could not stand.
Bleezing.
Roger, someone who was at the best of times a stern skeptic, was trying his damnedest to understand what he had bore witness to. He had, if he was to believe what his eyes were telling him, witnessed this man in the white lab coat with no hair and thick blue glasses walk through a wall. The wall on the other side of the room. There was no denying it. Roger's eyes knew what they had seen. It was as distinct as a bright summer's day where everyone had been anticipating rain, but the rain had decided to not come. First there was nothing, just a plain, boring white wall. Then, and this is the best bit, someone walked through the plain, boring white wall. Roger's mind had to take some time off to adjust. Robots were one thing. There had been great advancements in the field of robotics lately. It wasn't out of the realm of believability that a scientific facility would have a more advanced version than what was available to the public. Hell, to a large extent, most people's vacuums were robots now. Traversing through walls? That was something that was still very much firmly in the realm of science fiction. Or at least it was. As the man approached Roger, Roger couldn't stop his mouth, no matter how hard he tried, from asking, "Did you just walk through that wall?" Yes, yes I did, the man in the lab coat said excitedly and proudly. "It is truly wonderful to meet you, Roger. Truly, just wonderful," he continued, extending his hand out towards Roger to shake, as is the common practice when you're meeting someone new or someone for matters of business. "I must admit, though, Mr. Cohen, you're much shorter than I imagined," he continued to ramble on. This man's mouth oft spoke before his brain had the chance to catch up. "I think that's because I'm sitting down," Roger said, looking up at this bald man whose eyes seemed to be magnified 10 times their original size by their bifocal lenses. It allowed Roger to see every minor vein that created a spectacular labyrinth within the eye. The man in the lab coat pushed his glasses further up the bridge of his nose, somehow magnifying his deep brown eyes even more. "Ah, yes, that seems to be causing the issue," the doctor said, chuckling to himself. At long last, Roger found the strength to stand, and Roger grabbed the man's hand for a firm, friendly, professional handshake. "I presume you're this doctor I've been waiting for," Roger asked, hoping to have some form of proper introduction with this interesting doctor. "That would be me, yes, Dr. Davis," Dr. Davis said, shaking Roger's hand vigorously with a huge smile planted on his face, not unlike Carol's. "May I ask you something?" he continued, releasing his grasp from Roger and applying hand sanitizer from a bottle he kept in his lab pocket. "Please," Roger replied. "Why were you sitting on the floor?" I couldn't find any chairs. The room is quite bare," Roger replied, hoping Dr. Davis would be able to shed some light on this mystery. Dr. Davis didn't say anything in response. Instead, he pushed his thick glasses back up the bridge of his nose. They were glaringly far from a perfect fit, and he placed his hand against the white wall and applied a minute amount of pressure. A panel on the wall fell inwards a few centimeters, and a burst of magnificent blue light surrounded his hand. Slowly, the lower part of the wall began to rise, and a chair was spat out. The wall snapped shut again. This appeared perfectly logical and normal for Dr. Davis. He was bemused as to why Roger hadn't done it already. A little sippy water. Roger, on the other hand, found his mind struggling to grasp what reality exactly was. Yet again. "Do you want to take a seat now?" Dr. Davis asked, gesturing towards the chair. I don't think I really need it anymore, do I?" Roger replied. No, of course not," Dr. Davis said, stretching his arm around Roger. "I suppose it's time that we begin," he continued, as the two of them set forth towards the wall on the other side of the room. As they walked, the wall behind them slowly opened back up. A purple tentacle wrapped itself around the chair and snatched it back inside, rather upset it was disturbed for no apparent good reason. Dr. Davis and Roger approached the wall on the far side of the room, and for the briefest of moments, reason decided to leave Roger's head. He found himself tensing up. While yes, he had just witnessed the man standing next to him, whose hand was firmly wrapped around his shoulder, walk through the very same wall they were approaching at a brisk pace, Roger's mind had already come up with several far-fetched explanations as to why that could be. Perhaps it was a trick. Perhaps Roger's eyes didn't see what they thought they had seen, and there was just a very well-hidden door. Or perhaps it was all a really elaborate and moderately convoluted prank. Perhaps they wanted Roger to drive across the country and walk headfirst into a wall. When he did, everyone he had ever known from school, work, and family would have come out and have a mighty big laugh at his expense. All of this, of course, was utter nonsense. However, it had happened before. An unfortunate woman named Tamara. It was the dawn of her 13th birthday, and she was awoken by her panicked father. Before he could fully explain what was happening, they were already driving in the car, heading across the country, and she was being fed a confusing tale involving aliens and monsters and a great white shark. She was told that she was the only one who could save the planet, that she had to train in a magical land in the woods. While there is a magical land in the woods, Tamara's father was not aware of this. Her father knew all of these things because he had been a Secret Service agent this entire time, tasked with keeping Tamara safe. But now he no longer could. Obviously. When they arrived in the wooded area, Tamara's father told her to run directly for a tree and to not flinch, and it would transport her into another world. And she did. She ran into a tree. In short order, what followed was Tamara being surrounded by several of her family members and friends from school, all laughing and handing out cake. Apparently, it was some sort of coming-of-age tradition in their town. Tamara doesn't speak to her family anymore. Of course, for Roger, however, he passed through the wall as if it weren't there at all. He looked over his shoulder, and Roger was more confused. From this side of the wall, it looked as if there was no wall, simply a giant, obvious gap. No grand white wall, no solid structure, just an open space that led directly into the large white room Roger had spent so much time in. Roger wondered how it was within the bounds of possibility to make a wall appear to be solid, stable, oh my god, and for the lack of a better term, there, when in reality, it wasn't there at all. Fucking hell.
Yeah, I know, it gets brutal, doesn't it? I read 30 pages
I know,
of
it
this.
does, it gets hard. Yeah, I've only done 10, fucking hell. Thanks to science fiction invading every aspect of popular culture, Roger's brain speedily ascertained that it must have had something to do with holograms. It had nothing to do with holograms. Roger's brain decided that it did, however, and he never thought about it again. But make no mistake, however, it was most definitely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, had nothing to do with holograms. The room that Dr. Davis and Roger Cohen had stridden into was much less a room and much more of a corridor. An impressive corridor. On the other side of Roger and Dr. Davis were glass windows in which Roger could see various rooms, some empty, some containing robots doing different tasks such as building blocks, knocking over blocks, and vacuuming. One room contained a robot that soul's purpose was to fall over, stand back up, and fall over again. Science. It's truly a wonderful thing. Finally, as they walked through another wall, Roger found himself, yet again, confused as to what lay before him. A white wooden door with the number 78 nailed onto it. "You're in room 87, Dr. Davis said, patting Roger on the shoulder and ultimately releasing his grasp around him. Roger stared at the door, and the door stared back. It definitely had the number 78 on it. "That door says 78, Roger said, hoping Dr. Davis would notice and that this wasn't another strange science occurrence. "Oh," Dr. Davis replied, having not noticed that door was brandished with the wrong numbers, but knowing it was unquestionably wasn't some sort of strange science thing. Dr. Davis pushed his thick glasses back up the bridge of his nose and moved up to the door. He pulled a hammer out from his lab coat and squeezed the nails that held the numbers in place out from the door. Then he swapped the position of the numbers and hammered the nails back in. The door now read 87. Dr. Davis reached into his lab coat pockets yet again and handed a key over to Roger. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "We'll come get you when we're ready," he continued, wrapping both his hands around Roger's before saying goodbye and walking back the way they had come. Roger was left alone with the door that read 87. And that is chapter 2.
Oh, chapter 3 now.
We're on chapter 3 now, yeah.
Cool. You got 13 pages. That's not too bad.
Water in my goddamn eye. Right.
That's how it works.
Let's play musical chairs again.
Let's do it.
Do do boo ba doo ba doo boo 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 ba doo ba doo ba doo.
The interchanging sequence.
Why did you go around the back of me?
Improv. There we go. Now let's continue this with chapter 3. I don't know why I'm wearing this.
Good buddies.
We are very good
That's why I
pals.
sit this close to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this.
Reason.
Yeah, no other reason at all. Now, Caitlin Cook traveled homeward from what she originally had thought would have been a short trip to the shops.
Speak louder.
Yeah, exactly. Just give me a sec. Yeah, it would have been a short trip to the shops, just grabbing the essentials. It somehow turned into the next week's worth of shopping. The wind was relentless against her face. The entire reason she kept her long blonde hair tied out of the way was because of the wind. It always seemed to blow harder in Tron. She'd missed that.
Tron.
Yeah, Tron. I keep unpronouncing it. No idea. Just can't do it.
Just can't read.
Just can't do it. Caitlin crossed the street and headed towards her house when she spotted a familiar rusty orange car driving past her. She gave a friendly nod to the car's occupier, her neighbor Roger, and put him and his car out of her mind for the rest of the day. To be fair, her day was going to be peculiar when compared to her usual days. Caitlin walked in the front of her unbelievably large old house and placed all 4 bags of shopping she was struggling to hold down on the kitchen counter. She'd deal with it later. She wouldn't. She flicked on the kettle and moved into the living room. Beautiful dark oak flooring blessed her feet.
Let's say flooring.
Flooring.
Flooring. Back to primary school now.
Yeah. She had been living in this house for a few years now, and every day she found something new about it. The kettle flicked itself off, and Caitlin stopped, admiring some of the brickwork on her living room wall. As she moved from the living room into the kitchen, something caught her eye. Something was out of place. "That's curious," she muttered to herself as a flash of light appeared between a minor gap in the beautiful dark oaken flooring. Caitlin crouched down and tried to peer through the gap in the floor. It couldn't have been more than 1 centimeter wide. She couldn't make out much of anything, but curiosity had firmly grasped into Caitlin's actions at this point. Flooring! I agree. I think it's the best word I've ever came up with. Yeah, crouched down, it was 1 centimeter wide. She couldn't make out much of anything, but curiosity had firmly grasped onto Caitlin's actions at this point. She, in a few nimble movements, went into the kitchen, grabbed several different tools, and began to take the piece of oak flooring out from its place in the floor. With it removed, she could get a better look. It seemed to be a whole basement area, one that was most certainly not on the floor plan of the building. Even more curious as to where the light had come from and just what this room was. Caitlin began to tear at more pieces of the oak flooring until after the ice cream she had bought had melted. There was a considerably large hole in the hallway between the kitchen and the living room. Never stopping one moment to consider any likely dangers, Caitlin jumped into the hole and landed in the strange hidden basement of her house. She turned on the torch on her phone and waved it across the halls that surrounded her. Dust and more dust covered stacks of papers and strange drawings. Caitlin began wondering what her parents had been doing all of this. She randomly chose one of the many piles to begin looking at and started scanning through the papers as fast as she could. I really hope you do. Some were in trouble, some were in terrible condition and crumbled into nothing upon touch. Others repeated the name Delphic multiple times and spoke about vampires and fairies and things called Vigo. There is a lot of work, thank you, a lot of work for fantasy novel. Don't need primary school, can go suck a fat one. Caitlin said to herself, thinking she was, yeah, as long as it doesn't actually exist, it's perfect pronunciation. Thinking she was starting to make sense of the papers that lay before her. She was not. After 20 or so minutes of reading through papers describing the process of sucking one's life energy, that sounds like full sack all over again, Caitlin's eyes grew tired of fiction, and her brain on the instant remembered all the frozen items that were now most surely melting on her kitchen counter. She climbed out of the hole she had created and pulled herself into the kitchen, where the ice cream she bought had decided to liquidate. With a defeated sigh, she cleaned up the mess and left the house again to replace the tarnished goods. The strange basement and the light she saw coming from within had moved to the back of her mind for time being as she closed the front door behind her. Little did Caitlin know, there was a sniper aimed directly at her head. The sniper was steady. It didn't waver from its target. It followed Caitlin all the way to the shops, which wasn't that far from the house. A 5-minute walk, and it followed her all the way back, waiting patiently for the signal to strike. A murmur from a hand radio, the signal given, the trigger pulled. Caitlin knew it. Her life had changed. First, a bang louder than any bang she heard before, as if a car had backfired next to her eardrum. Second, she hit the ground hard. Third, she assumed she was dead. This was it. It was all over. In a blink, she had gone from living in a quiet town and finding a strange secret basement to being shot dead outside of her own front door. Fourth, she was not dead. The bullet was a few inches from making contact with her skull before someone miraculously tackled her to the ground. Someone saved her life. In fact, someone was laying on top of her in that very moment. Someone who was dressed entirely in black. "Run now!" the person dressed in all black whispered to her before yanking her from the ground. Roger was enjoying a decent cup of coffee. He sipped it quietly on a comfy blue sofa.
Stuff. You're just changing huge things from the book right there. Read that sentence again.
What do you mean?
You just said Roger was enjoying a decent cup of coffee.
Oh, a decent cup of coffee.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Why is he not enjoying coffee? Why is he not like
coffee?
coffee?
It's a very well-established part of his character that he likes tea.
Yeah, he does like tea.
It's integrated into him.
I think we should have him have coffee. But yeah, he's enjoying his cup of tea. He sipped it quietly on a comfy blue sofa. The room in which he was sat nice. It had a lovely warm fireplace, which was already lit when he entered, and wooden tiling covered the floor, causing the heat to really bounce around the room. It was enough to even make the most bitter, hard, cold person melt. This was the one thing about the room that Roger didn't understand. It just so happened to be the thing that he stared at while sipping his decent cup of tea.
This is coffee.
Oh shit! I'm ruined. An enormous mirror in the usual space where somewhere would put a TV or a bookshelf. The whole room was centered around this mirror. It was quite strange. Roger stared at the mirror and wondered to himself if anyone was staring back. "Hello?" he whispered before promptly raising his cup of coffee to his mouth, worried that perhaps the mirror might reply. The mirror did not reply. However, there was a knock at the front door, virtually the same second Roger tried to start a conversation with the mirror. This was rather suspect to Roger. Not wanting to keep his hosts waiting, Roger opened the door and found himself empathetically confused when he woke up in bed. Yeah, little sippy cup number 2.
Little sips. Little sips.
Little sippy back here. "Get up for school, Tim!" A voice yelled at him. A woman's voice. Not any woman's voice, his mother. Not any woman's voice, his mother's voice. Obviously. Roger looked at his body, expecting to see his usual early 30s body that had perhaps more gut than he would have liked. But who has the time for exercise? The workday wasn't designed to support it. Even so, Roger did not see his usual early 30s body that he had grown used to, that perhaps had a bit more gut than he would have liked. No, instead, Roger saw a body of a 13-year-old boy. He was in classic blue striped pajamas and almost half a foot shorter than he was used to. His jaw refused to close as he climbed out of bed. Slowly and instinctively, Roger got dressed into a school uniform. His mind was elsewhere, trying to make sense of what was going on. Was he suffering from some kind of delusion or dream? Perhaps the doctor had slipped him something. The tea. Was there something in the tea? No, of course not. He made the tea himself. Didn't he? Yes. As he buttoned up his shirt, Thoughts relating to tea and doctors began to leave his head, as did thoughts about science facilities and buildings that stood in the middle of nowhere and warped light around themselves, and androids called Carol, and strange pamphlets that are poorly put together, and working in an office space and a cozy small house with a medium-sized kitchen. It was all becoming a hazy fog. It must have all been one strange dream, Roger thought. Didn't that voice call him Tim? 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 Of course! Tim! Roger's name wasn't Roger, it was Tim! Well, it was obvious, wasn't it? It was all a dream. Roger wasn't called Roger, he wasn't in his early 30s, he didn't have small square glasses, he didn't even work in an office. His name was Tim. He wore round glasses. He was 13. He went to school. Of course. Tim laughed to himself as he finished breakfast. What a ridiculous dream he had felt it felt so real. Tim's mother entered the kitchen and smiled at him, glad he finally got out of bed. Tim's mother was smartly dressed, wearing a dainty skirt paired with a light pink shirt and suit jacket. Today was her last day in court. Today the divorce was final. Tim would never see his father again. Been there, a vindictive, horrible man. Tim was happy about this. The best thing in Tim's mind about his new home in Tron was that Tron, yeah.
This is a sequel to Tron.
This is Tron 4.
This entire book, by the way.
Yeah, it's
in
Tron.
The world of Tron.
I'm not changing that now. Tron was fairly close to Tron Academy, which was the secondary school in Tron. It meant that Tim could walk to school and have a precious few moments to himself before being hit by the endless noise of teenagers, drama and hormones that infected the building dedicated to his education. Tim gave his mother a kiss on the cheek and wished her good luck as he left the house to head to his school. Tim wasn't long into walking when something caught the corner of his eye, something faint but growing rapidly in size. It was black. It was heading for him. Bam! Something hit Tim square in the head with quite a force, I might add, knocking him off his feet and onto his behind, and he sat on the pavement. He scanned the area around him, searching for what had walloped him on the side of the head. Then he saw it. A crow. A crow? A crow had just directly, and as far as it seemed, purposely smacked itself into the side of Tim's head. Tim had never seen such a suicidal bird before. It hurt. He stared at the crow that had tried to kill itself using the thickness of Tim's skull. It wasn't moving. It lay perfectly still on the pavement, as if it were part of the stones themselves. Was it dead? Had it succeeded in its task to smash itself out of existence? Tim was about to see something that would send a deep, cold, painful shiver into the depths of his soul. This crow, this bird, this avian, this corvus, this suicidal black blur had a human face. It wasn't any human face this bird wore as its own. No, it was Roger's face. A terrified, high-pitched scream escaped the mouth of Tim, and he backed away from the crow as fast as his short legs would allow. His breath became rapid as he hit his head against the fence to someone's garden. Slowly, as the curse of every young person and cat, curiosity got the best of him, he etched his way closer to the monstrous bird. Caitlin ran for her life alongside a man dressed entirely in black. The man in black held onto Caitlin's arms like a vice as they ran full speed down her once quiet street. Now, gunshots echoed, glass shattered, and people screamed as the sniper tried to hit its target. A black SUV pulled up in front of Caitlin, and 3 people all climbed out, all dressed in the same black clothing as her savior. All were vastly different in size and shape. One wasn't much larger than Caitlin. One was short. Very short, but had broad, muscular shoulders. That's me. The other was thin, tall and thin, as if someone had sucked all the mass away from a giant in a fairy tale. Caitlin was shoved into the back of the car. Caitlin's brain froze, unable to process what was happening. Was this a kidnapping or a rescue? What was happening? Unfortunately, her savior's brain was scattered throughout the interior of the car as the sniper landed a shot. After a moment of yelling from the others, everyone scrambled into the car and took off with a squeal. It wasn't long until Caitlin left Tron. She would never return. Tim's hands slowly reached outward towards the matted black feathers of the dying bird, before they could make contact. However, Tim was suddenly sat in class, happily filing out mathematical equations. He was about to find the answer to x. It was 2.78, by the way, when his teacher spoke up. "Tim?" she asked, pulling his attention from his work and towards the front of the classroom. "Tim," she repeated. "Tim," she had said a third time, never giving Tim the chance to reply. "Can you taste the color orange?" she continued. Tim's world began to spin uncontrollably. He looked around the classroom at his classmates. They were all static, frozen, unwavering from their commitment to stare at their work and not look upwards, regardless of what happened. Tim looked back to his teacher, who normally had welcoming blue eyes and a charming smile. Now, they were slightly different. Those welcoming blue eyes had been replaced by demonic, black, evil eyes, that charming smile replaced by a devilish, fiendish smile from ear to ear. Gasp! Tim found his breath quickening, his muscles became tense, and adrenaline started to make its way through every joint, muscle, and toe of his body, not his toes. The color orange, can you taste it? She bellowed deep from her gut, revealing a long forked tongue of a snake as she did. By now, thankfully, Tim was entirely made up of adrenaline and reflexes, managing to speedily duck his way past the demonic teacher and get out of the room. Before he could think about what he had done, he was speeding down the school hallways. Ooh, scary, scary. I agree, and frankly, a blatant disregard for the rules. Not the toes! I know anything but the toes. On any typical day in the school, you could find the hallways filled with pupils and teachers, heading to and from classes. Now the halls sat empty, cold and grey. Only Tim and his demonic teacher ran through them. The school began to warp and spin as Tim charged through the halls, slowly. He found himself running downwards, then steeper and steeper, until he was falling, and just before he hit the bottom, an ocean of white. Caitlin was in shock, her face a deathly pale. She couldn't move, she couldn't blink. She stared outward to the green fields and blue sky, letting her eyes glaze over at their simplicity. The cold ocean of white was interrupted by thick musk of cigars and whiskey. Horns and sirens echoed throughout the city, and Tim stood over a dead body wearing a cheap suit and smelling like weeks-old laundry. "Jim?" Jim's partner Michael asked, placing a friendly hand onto a stiff shoulder. Michael was a good cop, but new to the force, a rookie naive to the real dangers of the world of the city. Tim had been... Wait, no, Jim? Jim? Who was Tim? Jim thought, staring at the mutilated corpse of a 20-something-year-old waitress. He had been staring at the corpse for several minutes, and Michael was starting to feel worried. "You okay?" Michael asked. "Fine," Jim replied instinctively. It was practically muscle memory at this point. You can't be a detective in the city and have time to worry about your feelings. Crime doesn't care about your feelings. Jim walked back to his car, a black 1975 351 Windsor V8 powered two-door Gran Torino in perfect condition. A real cop's car. He lit a cigar. "What the hell was going on?" "Jim," Michael said, walking over to his partner, worried. "Let's go get a bite to eat. I'm famished. We need a break." Jim grunted. "Urgh!" In response, he was never quick to talk, always choosing his words smartly. That's how I like to choose my words. Michael drove them to a nearby dive diner for a bite to eat and a change in scenery. It was far from clean, but that meant far from people, and being far from people was that they needed more than a decent meal. "Something's wrong," Jim said, his throat gravelly and itchy, sounding as if it had been smoking for the past 40 years. Because he had been smoking for the past 40 years. "What does?" Michael asked, crushing a cockroach that tried to run across their table. "This! All of it! This whole damn thing is wrong," Jim said, looking out the diner and onto the city, rain bombarding the windows, desperate to get in. "It's just another job." "Is it?" Before Michael could piece together what his partner was talking about, the waitress approached, placing a slice of apple pie in front of the two of them. "I never ordered this," Jim said, trying to sound as friendly as his deep, shattered voice would allow. "On the house," the waitress responded, unblinking and monotone. Fair enough, Jim said, never one to look a gift horse in the mouth, and cutting off a sliver of slice of pie with a spoon. The spoon dropped to the floor. The pie was bleeding. What the hell? Jim shouted, pushing the plate away from himself. What is it? Michael said. Jim tried to explain, but his mouth couldn't form the words. He looked back down at the pie, and it was normal. No blood. Just apple. I thought I... Never mind, Jim said, words finally coming back and panic leaving. He kicked himself over this for a short moment. He was supposed to be a cop. He was supposed to be able to handle surprises like that. He shouldn't panic. What color was it? Michael asked, robotically monotone. What? Jim asked, staring his partner in the eye, making sure he had heard what he thought he'd heard. Michael felt something climb up his stomach and into his throat, as if his own organs had decided they didn't want to be on the inside anymore and fancied a holiday to Argentina. That's a really specific way of describing it, which I really appreciate from you. It's supposed to be lovely this time of year. He coughed. Apple pie spilled out of his mouth. This piece blew. Then he coughed again. Another piece, a different color. This continued until there were several pieces, each a different color. Blue, green, yellow, red, orange. Jim stood from his seat, slowly, trying to get a hold of his nerves. He was better than this. He was better than this. He could handle this. His legs disagreed. They ran out of the diner's chrome front doors and headed down the grey, rain-filled streets of the city. It seemed everyone was staring at him as rain pounded against his fedora like nails pounding into a coffin. I'm scared. I'll keep you safe. This is one bad trip. Sean growls. I love it. I love it. I'm glad you guys are keeping each other safe. It is a very scary book. I'm shivering right now. Roger! The voice repeated, ringing in his head. A female voice, friendly, smiling. Carol? Memories flooded into Jim's mind. Memories of Trone, of a science facility, of working in an office space. All of it. It all came rushing back. Then Jim fell into an open sewer grate. He fell into darkness for what seemed like a lifetime, before finally coming to a hard splat at the bottom. His legs snapping in twain and snapping life out from his body. Roger found himself to be wholly fine, if not a bit confused, waking up in what can be best described as a hospital bed in an incredibly pink room with clown paintings covering the walls. Caitlin stared out into the nothingness that surrounded her. The occasional sheep would blur by as the car raced down the country road. Slowly, she was regaining her confidence to speak up, accepting her surroundings. These people hadn't hurt her yet. One had just died in front of her. One had just died in front of her! Immediately, Caitlin found herself shrinking again, not wanting to speak. Someone had died, trying to save her from something, and she had no idea who or why. Then there was a bang. A really, really, really loud bang. It shook the car. It shook everyone's bones. It shook them to their souls. It had come from Trone. The explosion could be seen for miles. It enveloped the skyline. Trone was no more. The car came to a screeching stop as everyone on board looked out in shock. Caitlin's mind walked away.
Dun dun dun!
Oh, spooky, spooky.
Chapter 3 is probably one of the darker chapters.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Tone.
Yeah, it goes from being really wacky and silly to suddenly being extremely serious. Okay. Wow, there's some people flirting in this live stream.
Ban him, Scott.
Yeah. well, this book is very sexy, guys. I'm glad they're flirting more reading this than they were with the smut book. So that just shows how sexy that your book is for our
I know
audience.
I'm rock hard.
Yeah, same here. I'm very aroused. Extremely. Do you want to swap now?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Matthew does not want to read his own book.
No.
We're doing it. We're almost 2 hours into this stream.
Yeah, that's crazy. I want to make like a coffee or something.
Yeah, definitely. You want me to just stay here then?
Yeah. Well,
Do you need a coffee just now, or do you want to wait?
We can wait. We can get it. We can get it after. I'm gonna get through another chapter. See how we're
I can
feeling.
make you a cup of coffee while you're reading this chapter.
I don't want you to miss the book.
No. Yeah, I know. I've never seen
You
it.
know.
I don't know what's coming.
You have no idea.
Yeah,
you know,
no
you gotta
idea.
experience this firsthand. That's the whole shebang of it,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Just good
Right.
pals.
Okay, where the fuck are we? Chapter 4,
Four.
baby. Right, let's go.
Here we go.
Caitlin sat in the back of the SUV in a grieving silence as the car rumbled down. Excuse
Good
me.
start.
Couldn't get through a sentence. Down the empty street. She looked at the three people who accompanied her, studying each of them closely. The differences in the three of them continued to be a thing of curiosity for Caitlin, one being exceptionally tall, so tall in fact that they were bending their neck in an uncomfortable-looking way so as to not bash the roof with their head. The other, incredibly small, maybe around the size of a child aged 6 or 7. The third, more average in size and body type when compared to the other two, but still bulkier than your average person, and of course wore full black gear that hid their true identities. Finally, Caitlin found the strength within herself to break the silence. "Who are you?" she asked. "We're the Colors," the average-sized one replied as they drove, their voice definitely male, speaking with a thick Irish accent, as I just did.
Yeah.
"The Colors, what does that even mean?" Caitlin replied. "You'll see," the tall one replied, their S hissing like a snake. Silence washed back over the car, and Caitlin found her mind focusing on Trone yet again. On all of the lives that were just lost. She had no idea why, but she was more than certain that she was going to find out. Eventually, the SUV pulled over into an empty field. The three people dressed in black climbed out, and Caitlin followed their lead. "This way, please. Everything will be explained," the Irish one said to her, softly trying to keep her calm. Caitlin looked around the field they stood in. It was empty. Not a sheepdog, or sheep farmer in sight. She wondered where exactly it was they were going. This was promptly answered. The tall one's voice is my fave.
Yeah, it's very dynamic.
Yeah, it's very good. Where the fuck even was I?
Yeah, it's awful when you
the
read
shortest,
it. Lose your
the
place.
shortest of the three strangers, who was yet to say a single word, ran out in front of the pack. They suddenly came to a stop. They muttered something to themselves, and reality was changed for Caitlin forever. Again. The ground split in two, as if the gates of hell themselves were opening, and a set of long metallic stairs descended from the fresh opening in the ground. The tall one and the short one walked down the staircase as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The Irish one placed one foot on the cold metallic stairs before turning their head back to face Caitlin, and extending a hand towards her. "This way, please," he said. The staircase was long and steep. There were a few moments where Caitlin all but lost her footing and ended up at the bottom before everyone else. Thankfully, she managed to keep her balance as they marched down the impossible metallic stairs, their footsteps reverberating around them. Once they reached the bottom of the impossible stairs, they were greeted by a giant, impossible metallic door. The tallest of the three strangers banged on the door with a fist in a repeating pattern, and the door began to slowly open, producing an almost eardrum-bursting bang as they separated. Inside these intimidating doors was a shockingly small area, and a messy one at that. Wires and tubes littered the walls and floors, plugging into various TVs. It was poorly lit by a couple tube lights that flickered at a nearly seizure-inducing rate. There were 6 or so other people in the room, all wearing the same black uniform, but without the masks. In the safety of their own home, the strangers removed their black masks, revealing 3 hugely different faces. The shortest had a thick black handlebar mustache and a golden tooth that shone out of their face like a beacon, glinting off every light in the room. He looked rugged and tired and immediately found himself a seat and a drink. The tallest was reptilian in appearance, with scaly pale skin and blood-red eyes, and not a single hair covered their body. Finally, the average-sized one removed their mask, revealing bright orange hair that stuck up in several places, and they had almost pure white eyes. Caitlin followed the orange-haired one with her eyes as they approached another, similarly orange-haired person, this one a woman. He spoke quietly to her. It was bad news. Caitlin found herself feeling out of place. Her 3 escorts seemingly had forgotten about her as soon as they all stepped foot in this dark, drab, strange place. She was left standing in the middle of the room, occasionally catching the eye of someone staring at her, but no one dared to utter a word towards her. Until someone dared. "You're here!" exclaimed an extremely charming English voice from the other side of the room. Caitlin watched as a suave-looking man with a thin black mustache and some marvelous sparkly white teeth made his way over to her, arms extended as if they were old friends reuniting. Caitlin had no idea who this man was. This man was Derek Longberry.
Derek Longberry?
A vampire. Derek wrapped his arm around the shoulder of Caitlin and led her deeper into the room, bringing her to a small, round, metallic table. They both sat. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions for me," Derek said, sitting opposite from Caitlin. "There are perhaps a few things I will be able to clear up for you," he continued. Caitlin didn't reply. She sat in stony silence. I suppose you might say I'm the leader of our little organization here. We call ourselves the Colors," Derek said with a slight smug smile. Caitlin didn't react or reply, much to the annoyance of Derek, who was hoping to be swamped with questions by now. He always loved this part of induction. "Our goal is to allow people to see the truth," he began. "You've been lied to for centuries. Elections, they don't matter. Neither does your government. It's all lies. It's all out of your control, puppeteered by an elusive shadow known as Delphic." Caitlin's mind flashed to the papers she found in the hidden basement. "That brings me to the next thing I need to tell you," Derek said, trying poorly to hide his smile. "Every single mythical creature from your storybooks is real. Every one you've ever heard of. Hell, in our team alone, even ones you've never heard of. Hell, in our team alone, we have 2 werewolves, a gremlin, and vampires like myself," he said, brandishing one of his pointed teeth. "I want to assure you of something, though. Everything you have ever heard about us is most certainly a lie, or at best, a twisting of the truth. These lies have been spread so you feel scared of us, and it's worked. The divide between humans and everyone else has never been bigger. I want to set the record straight for you. I am a vampire. Yes, this is true, but you have no reason to fear me. None. A vampire killing a living person rarely happens. It's too much hassle, not to mention the guilt. No, we prefer the bite to be of the freshly deceased. Hell, in some cases we even bring them back to life, as was the case with myself," Derek continued, lifting the side of his shirt to show a large, deep, jagged scar that stretched across his entire gut in a spectacular pattern. "I got this in the field of battle, circa 1461. Caitlin stared at the scar. It was both grotesque and striking. She couldn't look away. "Do you know why we call ourselves the Colors?" he asked, hoping to hear anything from her. There was only so much information you could give someone about how their entire world is a lie before it becomes too much.
Know that feeling.
Alas, Caitlin continued to sit in silence. Derek let out a sigh and continued his monologue. "There are a few people in this world with an exceptionally small number, 1 in a billion, who are blessed with the ability to taste color. You really don't have anything to ask." Caitlin's mind flashed back to the ridiculous pamphlet that was pushed through the door. "Now, a lot of people confuse this with synesthesia, but we're talking about something entirely magical right now," Derek said. "Everyone has a spirit, a soul, if you will. Now, this isn't about religion. You could call it a life force, a soul, your being, but there is something inside you, something that makes you, well, you. And this thing is a color, a spectacular, wonderful color. It looks a bit orange, if I'm going to be honest. I've only been lucky enough to see it once, as I'm sure your father told you. But there are a few select people out there who can taste the color of your spirit, and if they can taste it, Well, they take control. They possess the body. World leaders, terrorists, nothing would be a secret to them. There would be no telling what they could do. That's why we call ourselves the Colors. We're looking for these people or person. We want to recruit them, train them, to help us find Delphic and bring an end to all of these lies, Derek continued, speaking with a burning passion. What did you just say? Caitlin asked. Yes, tasting a color is a gift indeed. We need all the help we can get to save the world, Derek said, happy Caitlin was at long last responding. No, you mentioned my dad. Did I? Oh, yes, I guess I did, Derek said, quickly running his fingers over his mustache. I would have assumed he'd have told you by now. Told me about this, about vampires, about... Did you say magic? Caitlin said, her mind deciding it wasn't going to worry if this was real or not. Well, as a founding member, I only assumed... A founding member? You're Caitlin Cook, correct? Daughter of Professor Daniel Cook? Derek asked. I am. Derek ran his fingers through his black hair. That stubborn fool, he muttered to himself. Your father and I were colleagues, friends, and together we founded this organization. Derek said. Caitlin couldn't stop herself from laughing, the absurdity of everything being said to her finally setting in. I'm shocked he never told you about us. I'm disappointed. I'm not shocked he never told you about us. I'm disappointed, but not shocked. Your father could be a hard man at times, Derek said. But listen, the reason we've brought you here is... You know my dad is dead, right? Derek choked on his own words. Daniel's dead! When? A few years ago now. Some strange accident. Are out investigating on his own again, the damned fool. He wasn't alone, Caitlin said, settling herself into the uncomfortable metal chairs where they sat. He had Mum with him. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. In truth, your father left our organization a while ago, and we didn't always agree. Derek said, the sadness clear in his eyes. But, he exclaimed, changing the tone of their conversation and snapping into a more chipper persona, I'm sure we have great news. Why would there be great news? The documents. Did Liam not tell you? Who's Liam? The room fell silent around them. Everyone was listening to this conversation. What happened in Trone? Derek asked, taking a moment to look at those who had come back. One was missing. Their faces were rough with grief. Caitlin explained to Derek her morning, her discovery of the strange basement, the sniper attack, the death of her savior, and finally the destruction of Trone. Derek fell back into his chair. He wiped the water out of his eyes. Oh, my God, Derek said. I'm so sorry. You're what? An Irish woman's voice roared through the air directly towards Derek. The voice belonged to Trish Murphy, the orange-haired woman who Caitlin saw be delivered bad news earlier. She stormed towards Derek. As she did, Caitlin could see that she had one green eye and one blue, both notably bright. Trish, Derek began in an apologetic voice, but before he could say anything else, Trish slapped him across the face, the impact echoing around them. Everyone was watching. Liam was killed, Derek. Liam was killed in Trone, and you don't even notice when he doesn't come back, Trish shouted. He died saving your new toy. I really hope she was worth it. She finished bitterly. Trish, Derek said again, I'm sorry about Liam. I should have noticed. I should have said something, but he knew the risks. We all know the risks. We'll honor him with the rest, but now isn't the time, nor is it the place, for you to voice your frustration with me, he continued in a calm, quiet manner. Trish, the orange-haired man with the bright white eyes said, calling her over to him. It's okay, he said, gesturing for her to come for a hug. Trish marched towards Caitlin, suddenly invading her personal space. You better not let us down, or I'll kill you myself, she said in a cold, harsh voice that froze Caitlin. Caitlin had no idea why she was here, let alone what she was expected to be doing. And with that, Trish stormed off and sat away from everyone else, in the far back of the base, before being approached slowly by the orange-haired man. Bet you're wondering why you're here, Derek said, trying to laugh away what had happened as noise began to fill the room once again. Follow me, he said, walking away from the round metallic table where they sat. Caitlin followed Derek. People were scattered throughout the base, most standing in groups talking. Derek opened a minuscule door in the back of the room, one that Caitlin didn't notice when she first arrived, due to the amount of junk and cables that lay in front of it. It had appeared to be another part of the wall before. Inside this room was a meager single bed combined with an incredible, unique, and unpleasant smell. Loving the background theatrics really made the experience.
I thought so, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is the sight, Derek said, smiling at Caitlin. We call him Eyes. He sees into the future, he continued, hoping to impress her. Derek shook Eyes awake. Come on, you old fart, she's here. Eyes sat upwards in bed, like a zombie rising from the ground, stiff and with a large, long groan. He had wild grey hair and an unkempt, crumb-filled beard. Tell Caitlin what you saw, Derek said, full of confidence. The snails will rule the world one day. Slowly they build their forces, Eyes exclaimed, his own eyes bugging out of his head as he licked his beard. No, the thing about her. Who? Her, Derek replied, quickly feeling frustrated. This whole ordeal was not going how he had imagined it. Caitlin Cook from Trone, daughter of Daniel Cook. I don't know any Caitlins who cook, I said. Leave me alone, he grumbled, laying back down in his bed and loudly pretending to snore. A frustrated Derek cursed at Eyes and left the room. He seemed particularly riled by Eyes and signaled Caitlin to follow him out. Caitlin took a moment to watch Eyes. It was painfully obvious that he wasn't sleeping. He had one eye wide open and was staring directly towards her. Hello? She said. Eyes snapped his one eye shut and snored louder. Caitlin left the room. Derek was sat back at the metallic table alone. Things keep getting worse. I'm sorry your induction has been this ham-fisted. We've been falling apart recently, Derek said. Isn't this thing going to be over soon anyway? Caitlin said, joining Derek from across the table. What are you talking about? Trome was destroyed. There's no way people don't notice. You mentioned this Delphic, some mysterious leader. Well, blowing up a town isn't that mysterious. This is going to be painful for you to hear? People don't care about Trone. They didn't care when it was there, and they don't care now that it's not. You think it's the first town that's been destroyed by Delphic? Derek said, the frustration of the day coming out in his voice. There's no way in hell an explosion that size goes unnoticed. It's impossible, Caitlin said through gritted teeth. Derek didn't want to argue. He presented Caitlin with the evidence. He grabbed a television remote and switched on one of the many TVs that littered the walls to the news. And that's the cutest puppy that ever saved 20 orphans, the newscaster exclaimed happily over the broadcast. Derek changed the channel to another newscast. 3 hero cats were awarded Medal of Honors today by the Queen for saving a pet store from being burned down, the newscaster spoke. Derek switched it to another channel. No mention of Trone, and another, and another. No one is reporting on it because Delphic doesn't want them to. This isn't true. This can't be true, Caitlin argued, stunned at what she had seen. There is no way this many people can be involved in a conspiracy, and no one has said anything. Not one mole? One whistleblower? Caitlin continued to argue. People have tried to spill the truth before. They always get there first, Derek said, grief in his eyes. No one has stopped Delphic. No one has ever seen him. Somehow, he always finds a way out.
Ooh.
He always wins. Derek continued, explaining slowly and carefully. That's why we fight. No one else knows what's going on. Slowly, Delphic is chipping away at us, but the first moment we get, we're going to take a chunk out of him. Caitlin's conversation with Derek came to an end shortly after that. She had been left with an overwhelming amount of information. She sat at the table by herself for a few hours. Was her father really involved in all of this? Derek stood in a circle with 3 others, all of whom Caitlin recognized. Next to Derek stood the orange-haired Irish woman Trish. Next to her, the small man with the thick black handlebar mustache, who Caitlin later found out was called Bill. And next to him was the tall, skinny reptilian man with no hair. He was called Ethan. Eyes as being his usual self, Derek said. I was hoping to do this part later, but Caitlin, it is time for the trial by fire.
Fire!
What? Caitlin interjected from where she was sitting and stood to join the circle. You'll be fine. Don't worry. Bill, Ethan, and Trish are some of our best. They'll make sure nothing bad happens. But this is the key part to your training. It's how we do things. I don't even know why I'm here. I'm just supposed to go along with this? Don't you want to help us? Bill asked, wielding a thick Scottish accent. They destroyed your town, after all. Killed everyone you knew. Dinna you worry. We will keep you safe. Caitlin knew Bill was right. Things will be made clear in time, Derek said, reassuring Caitlin. Please, will you do this? Caitlin thought about her answer cautiously. Yeah, I'll help. Roger sat in a hospital bed, surrounded by clown paintings. He looked around. No windows in sight, but the room was lit, seemingly from every direction. He was definitely still in the facility, somewhere. Dr. Davis finally entered the room, pushing his thick glasses up the bridge of his nose as he entered. What just happened to me? Roger spurted out before Dr. Davis could take a seat next to the bed. Davis seemed to be taken aback by Roger's sudden outburst and found his tongue stuck in his mouth for a moment. Dr. Davis, what happened? Roger repeated, adamant to get an answer to the bizarre experience he had just had. Roger, Dr. Davis said, let me ask you, he continued. What is reality? He asked. Excuse me? Roger asked. Reality. What is it? Dr. Davis asked once again, pulling a notebook from his lab coat pocket and at the same time letting out a subtle cough, clearing his throat. Roger found he wasn't sure how to answer the question. Before coming to the facility, Roger had a pretty firm grip on reality, his reality. It was simple and wild, chaotic yet calm. It was the perfect blend of paradoxes that complemented one another into forming life. A life that could be as busy, or as Roger preferred, as quiet and simple as the person desired. Yet as he sat in this pink room with paintings of clowns on all four walls and was presented with the question, what is reality? He had no idea how to answer. In his brief time in this strange building, he had seen an android that possessed a nearly perfect likeness to organic life. He had seen chairs be deposited out of walls. He had seen walls that had appeared to be there, but in reality nothing was there at all. Again, it wasn't holograms. He experienced life as a 13-year-old boy. He had seen a crow that had a human face, his face. He watched his teacher turn into a demon. He was a detective in the city. Yet when faced with the question of what is reality, he was stuck on one thing. Had he experienced any of it? Was anything real? Was it part of reality or some strange test? Could everything be trusted? Could it all be believed? Could he trust Dr. Davis? Was reality for Roger being a 13-year-old boy, or perhaps he was a detective, barely existing for anything other than the cases he solves? Or perhaps it was something entirely different. Roger thought about this for some time. He thought about it for so long that Dr. Davis eventually let out a polite yet stern cough to indicate to Roger that perhaps there had been sat in silence for too long and that there was more to discuss. Did all of that really happen to me? Roger asked, leaning forwards in his bed, exceptionally curious to find the answer. If there was one thing that was clear in Roger's mind right now, despite everything, he did not regret answering that pamphlet. This was the most curious and engaged he ever felt. The regret comes later. That depends, Dr. Davis replied calmly. On what? Roger asked. What do you think happened to you? Dr. Davis asked. From my perspective, you were in the room. I entered, and you collapsed to the ground, fell into a coma. Which is why you find yourself in this room, Dr. Davis continued, gesturing to the strange room they occupied. No, that's not right, Roger responded, trying to organize his head, fact from fiction, a harder task than it seemed. Did he imagine everything that had happened to him? Had it been some sort of strange dream induced by falling into a coma? It had all seemed so real. What if I told you reality was more than what you saw in front of you? Dr. Davis asked, leaning forward in his chair and closer to Roger's face, making Roger feel slightly unnerved. What if someone could control someone else? Like blackmail? Roger asked. No. Not like blackmail, Dr. Davis said, smirking. Do you know why we want people who can taste color, Mr. Cohen? I don't, Roger replied honestly. Dr. Davis took a pause, thinking about his words with care before speaking them. Everyone has a thing in them, a thing that makes them them. This thing, we're almost certain, as strange as it may seem, is orange. Words escaped Roger. Everyone has something orange in them. What? When we asked if someone could taste the color orange, that's because if you could taste someone's, for a lack of a better term, spirit, you control them. Control them, Roger asked. Control them. You become them. You assume their identity. How does that work? Dr. Davis paused again, thinking. Honestly, we're not entirely sure. We don't know if the person requires to know the other person, know where they are, or simply see a picture of them, or if they need anything at all. We simply don't know. That's why we need someone like you, Mr. Cohen, so we can learn. I have never experienced anything like what I just experienced. I was a child in Trone. I don't remember my name, but things were wrong, strange. There were monsters. And then I was in the city, and I was a cop. Things were even stranger, Roger said. I don't know how it works, he concluded. Dr. Davis pushed his glasses back up his face. Roger, that makes it even more exciting. It means we shall discover this together, he said, grinning stupidly. At least we know one thing. What's that? We know you can definitely taste the color orange.
Dun dun dun.
And then chapter 5. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness me.
Oh my goodness.
Oh goodness gravy.
It is 11 o'clock. We have been going for two and a bit hours. We've only got 7 people watching still, so that's pretty cool. How's everybody feeling in the chat? We are 30% through the way, so we have quite a while to go, but we are 70 pages in.
It's not bad.
It was, the opening of the book, really, the 5 chapters. I don't remember how many chapters are actually in this.
Quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
Quite a fair bit.
But pop off in chat. How you feeling? How you
vibes,
feeling,
guys? What we're feeling?
Are we feeling sleepy? Are we feeling dreamy? Are we feeling groovy? Are we feeling like you want to buy my book now?
Yeah.
Maybe that would be cooler. You should do that instead.
Yeah.
Everybody.
We'll find out what everyone wants.
Yeah.
We'll keep going.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we will.
Maybe we'll never stop.
Yeah, there's a lot more book to go, honestly. There is a lot more book.
There is so much book left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just under 200 pages.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Loads to be reading, but no one has said much, so I assume
we've got 7 people watching at the minute. They just love it. They just sat. They're all sat in eager silence.
They're all just like, we don't need to
just
talk.
Classes listening nicely to this bedtime story.
Yeah. Just excited to be involved.
Yeah. Just all snuggled up and
cozy and spooning.
Yeah.
All happy.
Yeah.
Like sardines.
They're all in the same room together.
Yeah, all huddled up.
Everybody.
One sofa.
I am feeling sleepy. Already bought the book. Liking Viking.
But only
here as long as you want to be here. You have been reading for ages. Vibing. We have been reading for a very long time. 2.5 hours almost.
Is a long time to be reading.
However, concurrent viewers just keeps going up.
Yeah, we've got 9 people in.
We're currently at a peak at the minute when we're been going for a while, so
we could keep going.
It's up to chat.
What are you thinking, guys? Do you think we should keep reading, or do you want it to stop abruptly?
Yeah, shall we just end it here?
Delete everything.
Yeah. Let us know. Emma says she's fine with whatever, basically.
Yeah, and 2 other people seem to have jumped in.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
For sure. Slowly climbing up in numbers.
It's pretty interesting. Let us know. Let
Tell
us
us what you
know. I want to
want,
hear a
guys.
consensus. People,
Please,
get us a
yeah,
consensus out here.
please,
Maybe we'll do
please.
another poll. Let's just do another poll.
Let's start the poll.
Start a poll. Boom.
Boom. What do
Whoa.
you want? Are you okay?
Do we keep going? Yes or no? Let me know, baby.
Let's go. Here we
Vote.
go.
Vote. 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 Vote.
And it's
Vote.
processing.
Vote.
Vote. 100% people say yes.
Vote. That's only like one vote so far.
The
Wow,
chat is
chat's popping off. Tumbleweeds. Yeah. Vote. Vote.
Vote. Please vote. Oh,
We
we're
got
gonna
one
cry.
vote. We got one vote so far.
keep going.
Democracy manifest.
8 other people say they're not bothered.
We got 2 votes. Democracy's manifesting
It says
still.
yes. Keep going.
You know, what are we gonna see? What are we gonna see?
Are people not sick of it? Is this a democracy? I love democracy.
I love democracy. Vote.
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 Vote. Vote.
Come
You
on,
don't
people.
vote, you're smelly.
That's true.
Yeah, you're big smelly.
Go for it. Boom.
Yes.
Add in some drama here.
Yeah.
33%.
33% people say no, 67% say
Yeah.
yes. Who voted no? I'm very curious. Who was like, you know what? Fuck off.
Well, maybe they're sleepy and they want to go to bed.
Yeah, they're like,
You know?
can't be fucked anymore. Matthew's never getting a coffee.
Yeah.
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 We'll just fall asleep here for you guys.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep the poll open for another like 2 minutes. So there is time if you are watching to vote on if you want to continue on.
Yes.
Sidpix is playing Baldur's Gate 3 apparently.
Yep,
I'm glad
good
everyone
shout
can
out to
see that.
Pix.
That's cool.
Yep.
75
75 now say yes, and 25%
yeah, 4
say
votes.
no.
Okay, democracy's manifesting itself some more.
It is
It's
winning.
continuing to democratize.
Yes, winning and winning and winning.
Yeah, I'm pretty sleepy,
Not
personally
pretty sleepy,
speaking.
but we can keep going.
We can do another chapter. We
Yeah.
can do another chapter and then see where we're at after chapter 5, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe do another 2 chapters.
Watch
Maybe
8
do another
billion
3
people
chapters.
enter, yeah.
Maybe do another 4
Maybe do all the
chapters. Maybe do another
chapters.
5 chapters. Maybe do another 6 chapters. I don't know.
Who
That
knows?
seems like a lot, but you know, it's taking us like what, half an hour a chapter?
Yeah, it seems to be at this rate. It's
Yeah.
half an hour a chapter, which isn't terrible, but it is pretty.
It's pretty long.
Yeah, it's still a
It's
lot.
pretty
of
long to
book.
talk for half an hour.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
long. It's like a very big long monologue. Oh.
Especially that one. I mean, that chapter basically was a monologue. It was
Yeah,
a lot of
pretty
dialogue
much.
in that one.
My voice died reading chapter 1. There's so many pages. So much to read.
Yeah, chapter 1 is very big.
But
It's
we will-
interesting reading through it though, because I wrote this a couple years ago.
Sneakily accidentally read the whole book. Oops.
I wrote this book a couple years ago, and like there's going through it, you know,
Yeah,
as
analysing
the
it.
author and stuff. I'm like, God, I could write this so much better, now.
Give yourself credit though. It was during COVID you made it.
Yeah, and it's all right. It's all right. It tells a story. It's fun. I take it as a good thing that I can look at something and be like, no, I can do this better.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
that means,
That's
you
a
know,
lot to like take away from it.
I wouldn't be able to do this before, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you can only get better by doing.
Exactly. This
So-
has to have existed for you to improve.
Exactly. Yes, 100% correct. But it's fun. It's a silly old time.
It is a very silly book. It's a fun book.
Yeah.
It's fun to read, and if you're interested, guys, if you haven't bought the book already, make sure you buy his book.
Yeah. Or I'll fucking do you in.
80%. Now say yes.
Yeah, it seems democracy says we keep going for now.
5
So
votes.
I'm going to end the poll with 5 votes to take it. 80% say yes. So
Let's do
Sean
it.
gets to continue on. I'm going to go and grab something to drink,
Alrighty.
and I will be right back.
I'll wait for you.
Okay. Don't be mean.
I won't be mean until suddenly I'm very, very mean. Alright, guys, we're gonna be doing another chapter, chapter 5. It should be interesting. Hopefully, you guys are ready to dive more into it. Should be a good time. Hopefully, like, Matthew doesn't take too long, or if he does take so long, I guess we're just going to be talking in the void forever, which could be quite exciting. You never know. Could be fun to do. But yeah, his book's very, very fun to read. It gets more wackier and more absurd. As you can see, it's very, very fun. There's a lot going on, and yeah, you'll be able to see how Roger deals with the fact that he can taste the color orange, and the book will speak for itself. We'll go through it, and it'll be a fun time, and we'll explore this chapter and see what you guys think of it. It should be very, very fun. It is crazy to think that it is already 11:15. We should have probably by now, in theory, finished the smut book, because it was only like 130 pages, and we're 71 pages into this. So in theory, if we kept at the smut book, we probably would have gotten maybe 4 hours in, 4 or 5 hours into it, which, take with a grain of salt that it is what it is. Love this book. Well, I'm glad you love it, Emma. It is a very fun time. It was fun to read as well. I mean, Matthew sent me these drafts years ago, read them, and obviously when the book came out, when it was in its final draft, when it was going through the process of getting published, I read that bit, and it was a good time. And, he's sent me other drafts of his books, and they are pretty good as well. Very, very different themes and tones, which, is interesting to see back and also read back on this, because it's probably been a good while since I've also read this book. So it's fun to, read it, know where it's going, and also just be able to, take in and appreciate some of the other stuff that's just going on in general. And yeah, we're just waiting. He feels like he's been gone for probably 3 minutes or so, but it is feeling like an eternity. It feels so long. But we'll just wait, and we'll 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 wait until he's back. Yep. Sorry. I need a drink because I've been talking for so long, my throat is getting so dry. But how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a good time. I can't imagine what it's like watching it, us read the book, especially when I've been stumbling over my words like crazy, because reading after so long, my brain gets so tired. I'm like, oh god. It must be weird sitting in a room talking to yourself with zero feedback. Yeah, Emma, you have no idea. It's like being a crazy person. No one giving you anything. You have to think constantly about what to say instead of just staring at the camera going, it is very strange. But it's nothing I don't do already. I already talk to myself on the regular with zero feedback, so it's all good. Oh, thanks, Emma. I'm glad you think I'm doing well. I'm just winging it. Just winging it and chatting absolute rubbish. And just waiting. Just waiting and waiting. And yeah, it'll be fun to keep reading on and just keep on going. Keep on going. As you can see, there is loads of different kinds of mythical creatures in this book. There is vampires, there is reptiles, there is loads of different types of things going on. Very, very fun to get into it. Must be hilarious. Yeah, when I'm talking and there's zero feedback, I constantly want to go and laugh hysterically, but can't do that. And he is returned. He has finally returned. Where's your coffee?
I got lost.
All right, that makes sense. So you got yourself juice instead. Brilliant. Are you ready to keep going?
I am.
Perfect. Well, let's dive into Chapter 5 of Can You Taste the Color Orange? Dr. Davis and Roger walked side by side down the pure white corridors of the facility, back towards the room numbered 78, or so Roger assumed. Yeah, no, it's not coffee. He's lying, motherfuck. Wrongly. Before speaking, Dr. Davis took a deep breath, something that he found often helped when about to bring reality-shaking news to someone, which he had to do more than once before. How knowledgeable are you in fairy tales and myths, he asked, causing Roger to laugh a little at the absurdity of the question.
Tee-hee.
Ha 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 ha! Surely this wasn't a serious question. As you're aware, it was. Are you serious? Roger asked, cracking a smile. I am incredibly serious, Dr. Davis replied, his face stern and rigid. It was not the same for jokes. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it is, Kyle. Well, I suppose I'm as familiar as anyone else. There are stories everyone knows, Roger answered. What if I told you, in real life today, there existed vampires, ghouls, fairies? Dr. Davis asked, stopping in the hall. I would ask for proof, Roger replied, trying not to smile. Understandable, Mr. Conan. Now, what if I told you that there was an underground militia run by a vampire like the ones you have read about, who enlists other mythical and fantastical creatures for his own bidding? Oh, I bet he did. He got lost.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? What are you implying here? Got lost. You damn know what they're on about. I would say it's probably less likely than people having something orange inside them, Roger replied, half jokingly. He couldn't help himself. What he was being told was absurd. I am being completely sincere, I assure you, Mr. Cohen. Roger rested his back against the pristine white wall. No, you're kidding. You have to be, he said. I can show you proof. Would you like some? Dr. Davis said, cracking a smile. I insist, Roger replied. Very well. Just a bit further down this hall, Dr. Davis said, now continuing his walk through the endless white corridor. After a little walk down the boring corridor, Dr. Davis and Roger stood outside a door. Inside the door, there was a room. Inside that room, there was a thing that would start at the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. And it's hard for me to explain why you're about to see. That being said,
sing the whole chapter.
Yeah, I should.
Sing the whole chapter.
It's hard for me to sing what you're about to see. That being said, do your best to prepare yourself, Dr. Davis said, Roger, before finally opening the door to a tragic image. The room wasn't remarkable at all. Its appearance was bland and dull. It's the size of your average bedroom, but it was split in two by a glass divider. I thought that was pretty good. It was once on the other side of the glass divider that was of interest. A small girl who had blood red eyes, pure white skin, and black veins that enveloped her body. She stood unmoving at the corner of the room, staring at the doorway where Roger and Dr. Davis now stood. This was Lucy. I love musicals, I do as well, hence why I made that bit very musically. Dr. Davis approached Lucy, placing his hand on the glass divider. Lucy, he called to her. Quietly and slowly she obeyed. Dr. Davis gestured for Roger to approach the glass next to him, and Roger uneasily stepped forward into the room and towards the glass. This little girl, Lucy, is afflicted with vampirism. Home from work, you're still alive? Yep. Yeah, we are, Scots.
We did a vote. Everyone
said
keep
yes.
going, so.
Yes, keep doing it. Oh, yep. Roger watched as the little girl's blood-red eyes darted between Dr. Davis and himself. While it was hard to spot any sort of life in them, Roger could feel a burning hunger within. Hunger and rage. We caught her. Must be 2 years ago now. Oh, how time flies! Dr. Davis said, looking back in his memories. She was a secret to us, but that's something you should know, Mr. Cohen. Secrets can't be kept from us, he said, looking at Roger. Roger didn't look back, and was only half listening. He was stuck, enveloped by the never-ending abyss of Lucy's eyes. You're lost for words! Understandable, but Dr. Davis said before pausing his sentence and hitting a small red button on the wall next to him, causing a rat to drop into the side of the room that Lucy occupied. It wasn't long before that rat was no more. Roger watched Lucy devour it in its entirety before she scuttled off into the corner of the room once more. She looked more human now, a lot more like a scared little girl who wanted to go home. Roger felt a tinge of sadness in his heart, almost like how I feel a tinge on my head. And as you can see, Mr. Cohen, vampires are very real. You're gonna have to take my word on the others. Lucy is the only resident beside yourself currently at the facility. Actually, I think we might have the corpse of a South Wales sky troll. If you'd like to see it, it's quite a humorous looking creature, if I'm being honest with you. Giant nose and tiny, tiny ears. Roger had decided they had seen enough. Seeing Lucy had shaken something in him. Mathew, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Yeah, literally that's how I felt. This was becoming too much. Oh my god, he can read my thoughts. Caitlin sat in the back of the black SUV with Ethan, Trish, and Bill. Silence was in the air once more, and no one was sure they were to start the conversation. Bill broke the silence. You know, lass, I'm sorry about Tron. 'Tis a mighty shame, he said to her softly, the two of them sitting in the back of the car with Ethan in the front and Trish driving. Though I suppose you must be wondering a bit about myself, he continued, trying to get Caitlin's mind off Tron. It was a stupid idea to bring it up. Caitlin hadn't thought much about Bill in reality. He was shorter than everyone else. Sure, but he had assumed he was a little person. She was more taken aback by Ethan, whose appearance was very alien, dominating, and intimidating. You know, you're the first human I've actually worked with. Curious lot, you humans. Bill continued to ramble. You're no human, Caitlin asked. She's also Scottish now, which was quickly answered by a hearty laugh from Bill. Me human? Oh, ho, 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 ho. No, no, no. No offence, lass, but I'd rather be a bloody pixie than a human. You lot, you fight about everything. So, what are you? You had to ask, Ethan muttered to himself, eavesdropping into their conversation. Ugh, now that's a story. Bill said heartedly, I come from the original Scots, before any of you humans moved in and started all that stuff with the skirts and haggis. No, we're the true Scots, Yerid. That's who we are. Oh, what a mighty people we used to be. Mighty. Bill spoke with a fire of passion and a note of mournfulness in his voice. What happened to them? What else? Humans! They discovered our lands, forced us into hiding, Bill said, letting go a wee sad laugh. Ho 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 ho! You're lucky to find two of us within 100 miles or even 1,000 miles. Or 5 billion miles I would walk into the underworld. No, even though there isn't safe underworld, that's where we're from, Trish said. Sure, some can live with you lot, the more human looking, but people like Ethan, they have no other option. But what is it? Caitlin asked. It's a giant city underground, Ethan said, staring at the window at the rolling green hills. It's poor, lots of crime, but it's home. I'm sure you'll see it eventually, lass, Bill said. Hell, maybe today. Where are we heading anyway? Trish. Derek was a firm believer of learning on the go. Everything had a purpose, and the best way to learn was to do. It was a method that was often met with backlash, but to his credit, it did produce results. Only the strongest, smartest, and swiftest came back. People thought it was reckless. Snatch and go? Trish said. Snatch and go, Caitlin asked. We go into a place, snatch some information, or a person, a thing, something like that we would get out of there. But because all hell is broke loose, Bill explained. So what are we getting? Caitlin asked. From what I've been told, which as always isn't enough, Trish spoke bitterly. There's a couple pixies getting sold in a black market auction. We've got to save them. Pixies? Why would someone want pixies? Caitlin asked. Mighty, powerful, magic pixies possess us, lass. It could be used for all sorts of potions, but they be them love or health. It's a disgusting world out there. Pixies are small, weak, and no that bright. It's easy to take advantage of 'em, aye. Bill explained, watching the world pass by in a blur out of the car window. Caitlin was feeling incredibly out of her depth in this moment, as if she had been thrown into the middle of the ocean and told to swim to Australia. How Derek liked it. Roger sat patiently in his room, 87, and sipped some tea, staring at the large mirror in the spot where a TV or bookcase would usually be. I love bookcase. Moderately certain he was being watched. Delicioso. Dr. Davis took a seat next to Roger. Much to Roger's surprise, Dr. Davis had walked into the room with such haste that Roger didn't hear him enter. Okay, Dr. Davis said, rumbling his bald head. I have some things that I need to explain to you. Okay, Roger said, sipping his tea. The Organization of Real and New Grey Energies and Sciences has been around for millennia. He began. We've always been out of the way, working behind the scenes, making sure things don't fall apart. We investigate the paranormal, fantastical, and supernatural to make sure our people are safe. He continued, pushing his thick glasses back up the bridge of his nose, as he frequently did. The world is full of dangers you can't possibly imagine, and more secrets than even I know, Mr. Cohen. Vampires are just the tip of the iceberg, Dr. Davis continued. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all these creatures are evil or want to hurt anybody, although there is a fair amount that probably do. But these creatures are not fans of humans. Our rapid industrialization and technological advancements are seen by these others to be hurting the planet rather than helping it. Our populations grow much faster than the other species, and they see that as a threat. We're here to make sure they don't act on the supposed threat they see. Do you understand? Dr. Davis said, talking slowly and clearly picking his words exceedingly carefully. What do you want from me? Roger asked, looking Dr. Davis in the eye. We want to train you, Mr. Cohen. Teach you how to control this gift of yours. Let you purposefully taste the color orange, rather than it happening randomly. It should also stop the hallucinations that happen when you do take control of someone else. Train me? Why? Mr. Cohen, if you can control this, you could do so much good for the world. Think about it. No terrorists could hide from you. We could achieve world peace in our lifetime, Dr. Davis replied. The hope in his voice was clear. But, Roger began, feeling confused. None of this makes sense. I can't taste the color orange. I lied. Dr. Davis, I lied. I was just curious. I can't explain it. This isn't like me. I'm boring. I'm normal. I think I'd just like to go home and forget about all of this, he said, giving into his anxieties. Mr. Cohen, Dr. Davis said, sitting back in his chair, perhaps you came here thinking you were lying, but from what you have told us, you can taste the color orange. But I had never experienced anything like what I did before coming here. I can explain that, Dr. Davis said, but I think it would be easier if I just showed you, he smirked. Dr. Davis led Roger out of his room, numbered 87, and through the bleak white walls of the facility once more. As they moved through the endless array of corridors, Roger was sure that their size was entirely random. At times, he would be rubbing shoulders with Davis, and other times it felt as if they were walking on a football pitch. Dr. Davis eventually led Roger towards a set of stairs. Down and down and down we go, Davis said. Looking down the stairs, the amount of light on each floor below was significantly less than the floor they were on. They trudged down what felt like the 555th set of stairs, or possibly 555th. Roger could no longer feel his legs. It was so dark he couldn't see them. At this point, Roger would have assumed his legs had decided they'd had enough and detached themselves from his body as if it was for the fact he was still somehow moving down the stairs. Someone's lower half has removed itself from the
You've skipped 2 bits.
Yeah. From the upper before. However, it's a story so shockingly dull, I'd be wasting everybody's time telling it. Just know you're not missing much other than a penguin named Harold. Harold was a great guy. It's a shame you'll never know anything about him because he belongs to such a tedious, boring, dull, I'd rather watch paint dry story. Finally, they made it to the bottom of the stairs on what Roger thought must have been the basement level of the facility. It wasn't. It was so dark, Roger was forgetting what light was like until a clap from Dr. Davis changed all that. The room burst into a brilliant purple from floor to ceiling, and Roger was greeted by one of the most beautiful structures he had ever seen in his life. 3 obelisk-like crystal structures. Each were the size of a skyscraper and had a strange blue moving liquid within. "What am I looking at?" Roger managed to say, though his jaw dropped. Through his dropped jaw. This is what I call power," Dr. Davis replied. "We're not sure how these formed, but they're rare. Extremely rare. We've never managed to crack them open. But whatever these beauties are doing, it seems to unlock people's potential." And clap, Matthew's back in the room. Amazing. Dr. Davis fucks. I agree. I think Dr. Davis definitely shags. Top shagger. That's why I've suddenly tasted the color orange. This unlocked it. "There's a lot more this place can do for you," Dr. Davis said with a smile, his face bathed in purple light. "The things you'll be able to do will be incredible." That's us finished chapter 5.
That's chapter 5.
Whew, that felt quite quick, to be honest.
Did it?
Yeah, it flew by for me.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, got to really captivate the performance.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It is now almost 3 hours in.
Yeah, I think chapter 5 is probably a good place to end it.
We're 80 pages in.
Yeah, we're 80 pages in. It's 11:30.
Yep, it is getting quite late.
I'm tired as fuck.
Yeah. But thank you very much for coming along and listening to what was meant to be a smut book and became even more raunchy than it could ever be entirely, you know?
Turned me on more than I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm very, very aroused, and I'll continue to be for the rest of the night.
The most aroused I've ever been.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, I can see from your facial expressions.
This is what I look like when I'm...
POV, this is what you see when Matthew's turned on.
Yeah. Just kind of like...
Dead. Dead inside. You see him like this. He's aroused.
This is me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
yes.
boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh my. Orange smut.
Yeah.
I'm okay with 80 pages. I'm glad. Loved our cute story corner. Yeah, it was story time.
How many people left as soon as we said we were ending it?
Yeah, literally everyone was like, "All right,
Awesome,
fuck off.
done."
Yeah, bye. We don't need to watch this anymore."
Good night.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, we'll just end it there then.
Yeah,
now that
thanks very
everybody's
much for
left.
that, guys.
Goodbye. Rude. Your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live. I assume that's what we want to press.
Yes.
I'm going to do it
No.
right now.
No.
In the hopes
No.
that when I press the button,
It'll
it
not
will
be live
not be
anymore.
we'll just suddenly-
Yeah, yeah.
we'll just
This
suddenly
is
come
what
out
happens
and
when you end a stream. There's nothing
Yeah,
playing
it
anymore.
just gets weird.
We've
I'm just gonna
ended,
keep
yeah.
waving.
Yeah, waving.
There we
Bye.
go.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That was a lot.